Chapter 1501, Sorcerer Ancestor Yuan Long 1. Sorcerer Ancestor Hun Yu's voice was transmitted again. They're trying to monopolize chaos. I cannot leave. The message stopped there. It was obvious that none of the allied forces would survive if the great expert left. Besides, it had nowhere to run. It wouldn't have led its people to fight so relentlessly had they not been cornered. Since it had decided to fight, it would be to the death. Boom! A magnificent power pushed Su Ping and the others away. They instantly saw flashing colors and the scenery changed quickly. The sorcerer ancestor's image became blurry, while the heavens also became twisted in a flash, until everything in front of their eyes was gone. Following that, infinite darkness. To his surprise, Su Ping discovered that they had been pushed countless light years away. He was no longer able to sense the auras of the heavens, or that of sorcerer ancestor Hun Yu. Su Ping felt sad as he looked at the dark and silent void, and remembered the great expert's back. He knew it would be impossible for the guy to escape. Those heavens were clearly aiming for the sorcerer ancestor. It was impossible to become a sorcerer ancestor through cultivation, since the state itself was a gift bestowed from birth. Their population was limited. As the heavens saw it, ancestral gods were just troublesome ants that would fall eventually. That is, after the sorcerer ancestor died. None of them would have the power to resist the heavens by then. Hardly had Su Ping arrived in the Empyrean cultivation site when he witnessed a sorcerer ancestor sacrificing itself, and countless species fighting fearlessly alongside it. There had always been 12 sorcerer ancestors in history, but one of them just died. The Golden Crow's chief elder mentioned that a sorcerer ancestor died before the Golden Crows had chosen to live in seclusion. I wonder how many sorcerer ancestors are still out there. Su Ping's face was gloomy. His cultivation had been meteoric as he quickly reached the ancestral god realm. He was standing at the peak of all lives, yet he still felt lacking. That feeling of weakness had haunted him ever since he started cultivating. He could not rest because of it. A loud voice echoed among all the survivors. Hurry up and leave this place. We must not let the sorcerer ancestor die for nothing. The owner of the voice was an ancestral god with the body of a lion and the tail of a dragon, which was an intimidating sight. There were several incurable wounds on its body, left by the heavens. The lingering black-colored energy was eating away its flesh. There were survivors from different species, but all of them were mythical creatures. Anyone with 1,000-meter stature was basically a dwarf in comparison. Their leaders snapped out of their stupor and ordered their forces to retreat. Friend of the primitive clan, are you coming with us? A figure flew over. It was a massive bird with colorful feathers and a wingspan of 100,000 meters. The creature emitted an abundant aura of chaos, while its sound was as pleasant as spring water. Su Ping asked, "Do you have anywhere to go?" Frustration flashed in the bird's eyes. It said, "Our home has been destroyed. We can only go to the original dragons for help. They've always been close to us and will probably let us stay. We'll reestablish our home when the sorcerer ancestor returns." The original dragons. Su Ping was slightly dazed. It had to be a clan with a sorcerer ancestor, too. After all, only another sorcerer ancestor could be a sorcerer ancestor's friend. "All right, I'll go with you," said Su Ping. The bird was not surprised, since the primitive Chaos clan had already been shattered by the heavens. Su Ping, the only survivor, had probably escaped with his sorcerer ancestor's help. Besides, all the survivors had witnessed how he had led the dragons to fight in place of their ancestor. "Come on, I'll give you a ride," said the bird. Both of them were in the undying state. For such a being to let Su Ping sit on its back was a gesture of gratitude. Su Ping didn't overthink the situation. He simply jumped to its back and sat down. He also narrowed his body down to the size of a human being, which made him look like a speck of dust on the bird. The latter returned to the team and led its clan forward, along with other ancestral gods. "Is sorcerer ancestor Hun Yu coming back?" Su Ping asked on the bird's back. The bird replied with the firmest voice, "Of course. He is the strongest of the 12 sorcerer ancestors. The heavens cannot possibly hurt him. We were too weak and were only liabilities. He had to stay to resist the heavens in order to protect us. Is that so? Su Ping was silent. The primitive Chaos Clan's sorcerer ancestor had been destroyed. The Golden Crow's sorcerer ancestor was living in seclusion. The heavens were stronger than he imagined. Could sorcerer ancestor Hun Yu really come back? Su Ping didn't know what to feel. He was somewhat confused and desperate, while also frustrated and helpless. He even wanted to turn himself off and fall asleep. Perhaps all the problems would be gone after waking up. He wore a troubled expression as he looked at the silent skis. He suddenly made out a familiar shape in the eternal darkness. The little skeleton. Su Ping's sense of loss was instantly gone. He clenched his fist. The little skeleton hadn't been resurrected yet. How could he give up so easily? He hadn't trained the Inferno Dragon to become the strongest dragon yet. How could he give up before fulfilling that promise? He hadn't avenged the people from the Federation. Chapter 1502, Sorcerer Ancestor Yuan Long 2. I still have. He took a deep breath. Su Ping's eyes became cold and calm again. He asked the giant, colorful bird, I know little about the sorcerer ancestors. Tell me, besides your clan, was another sorcerer ancestor defeated by the heavens? Defeated or killed, the massive bird replied. Sorcerer ancestor Shimang and sorcerer ancestor Yin Kue were defeated. I don't know much about the others. As for the ones killed, your primitive Chaos Clan sorcerer ancestor and sorcerer ancestor Xu and Qi. I heard that the sorcerer ancestor of the Kun Peng's clan also encountered the heavens, but I don't know the exact outcome. Su Ping was dazed and his heart pounded. So, the sorcerer ancestors can escape from the heavens. Are you saying that sorcerer ancestor Shimang is still alive? Sure, the bird replied without thinking, giving the other an eye roll, dissatisfied by that question. The sorcerer ancestors are the strongest creatures born from chaos. How could they be killed so easily? They would never lose if the heavens weren't so cunning. The bird thought, do you think they're all as weak as your sorcerer ancestor? However, it chose to not say it aloud. In any case, Su Ping had risked his own life to help them. His actions didn't change the outcome in the slightest, but his courage was admirable. Su Ping felt relieved. Sorcerer ancestors could die, but they weren't completely defenseless when facing the heavens. If some managed to escape, it was possible that sorcerer ancestor Hun Yu could make it to safety. This also meant that it wasn't easy for the heavens to kill sorcerer ancestors. They weren't much stronger in comparison. Do you know the Golden Crows? Su Ping asked all of a sudden. He didn't know if he could go and meet the Golden Crows from where he was at the moment. Their world was merely a secluded, yet advanced cultivation site. While he currently was in a chaos cultivation site you had to access with 100 million energy points. If he reached the chaotic site from the Golden Crow world, his resurrections would only cost 900 energy points, which was nothing to him at the moment. That would practically make him invincible. He would then become the Chaos Clan's sharpest blade, and play a role that no other ancestral god could in the war against the heavens. The Golden Crows, the colorful bird said, of course I do. They are in the far south, which is too far from here. We can't go unless sorcerer ancestor Hun Yu returns and takes us there. How long would it take for us to get there? Asked Su Ping. It's not a matter of time, replied the bird. We would bump into the heavens on the way. It's a long and dangerous journey. We would be destroyed if we travel alone through chaos. Su Ping dismissed the thought upon hearing the answer. The only option at the moment would be to wait until they reached the original dragons. Time flew. Su Ping was incapable of sensing the flow of time while traveling in the Empyrean, as the concepts of space and time weren't present. Everything seemed to be still. Only those who had awakened their Tao hearts could move. Celestials could only hide in their small universes and push them to move, which was a slow and dangerous process. Our hero felt odd, as they hadn't spotted other universes on the way. He had seen many universe fragments in his previous travels beyond his world's universe. However, The journey thus far had been completely clean of any debris. Was this place swept clean by the heavens recently? Su Ping was puzzled by this. Using the time flow of his inner universe as reference, he knew a month had passed. The bird said, "We're almost there." Su Ping also saw a vague light in the darkness ahead. The light grew as they approached, which turned out to be continents floating in the void. Those extremely vast continents were protected by barriers that blocked the effects of outer space. Their width and length had to be measured by light years. Su Ping activated his chaos eyes, allowing him to see some of the continental views. Countless dragons were flying about. The place seemed to be a paradise of their kind. Whoosh! Two majestic dragons flew out from one of the continents. Their bodies were almost as big as half a planet, while their backs were like steel mountains. They carried an ancient feeling of toughness. Both dragons had undying state realms. "Hanyu clan, what are you doing here?" one of the dragons whispered, but the voice rumbled. Everybody was surrounded by the dragon's might. Su Ping's eyes glittered. "This dragon is even more intimidating than the dragon ancestor I saw earlier. Is it a dragon king from the Age of Chaos?" He summoned the Inferno dragon and his other pets to have them experience the great dragon's true might. Hardly had the Inferno dragon appeared when it raised its head and stared at the two dragons with fright in its eyes. The fright became even deeper soon after, and flames seemed to be burning in its eyes. It was shaking, while its bones were cracking. Even blood was flowing out of its scales. Su Ping glanced at the vast sky thunderous dragon and saw that it was having a rougher time resisting. It was almost crouching, as if holding back in excruciating pain. The dark dragon hound, on the other hand, was only slightly nervous. It was the same for the purple python and the others. Su Ping examined the Inferno dragon and finally realized that the fellow was struggling to resist the two dragons' might. Bloodline superiority was a substantial threat for other dragons. All dragons would have to bow before an ancestral god dragon king. The fear was deep in their blood. The Inferno dragon was trying to suppress and resist the fear. The effort was tantamount to resisting an instinctual trait. If breathing was one of those instincts, the Inferno dragon was essentially holding its breath, not for a moment but permanently. Undoubtedly, going against your nature could be fatal. Instincts couldn't just be disposed of. They were etched in your genes and blood. Removing them could prove fatal. While looking at his stubborn dragon pet as it trembled, Su Ping suddenly felt that he didn't really help as a master. Even if it truly became the strongest dragon in the world, it would all be through its own merit. He only gave it a push, nothing more. Su Ping extended his hands to touch his dragon's legs. Both dragons flinched, then stopped shivering. They looked at Su Ping simultaneously. He smiled at them and said, "Don't give in, you won't lose to anyone." The two dragons felt dazed for a moment, but then their eagerness to fight grew. "That's right, we won't lose to anyone." They had followed Su Ping and seen countless worlds and numerous mythical creatures. They could die, but they would never lose. Roared. The Inferno dragon was wreathed in flames as it let out a roar to the sky. The sound reached the billions of mythical creatures moving with them. The two Chaos dragons, whose teeth were already bigger than the Inferno dragon itself, both heard the roar and looked at the colorful birds back. They noticed two fellow dragons with impure bloodlines and an unremarkable Tao heart state. However, instead of kneeling, they were staring back with heads held high. Both of the massive dragons narrowed their eyes, with a glint of danger flashing in them. Dragons would always be ruthless to inferior kin who challenged their authority. The world of dragons was crueler than what outsiders could imagine. Hierarchy was extremely strict. The colorful bird noticed this exchange and its expression changed a bit. At first, it was angry because Su Ping had summoned a few lesser creatures to ride on its back. "What does this guy think I am? Some sort of mount that anyone can ride?" Then, an even more infuriating act. Those kids even roared at the original dragons. They went there to seek refuge, not to provoke. Chapter 1503, Dragon Prison, 1. Hunyu clan, what's the meaning of this? Said one of the dragons with a deafening voice, reaching all the members of the Hunyu clan. Sensing the hostile attitude, Su Ping narrowed his eyes and stepped out and said, "We bear no ill will, and we're not related to the Hunyu clan. We only represent ourselves. We'd like to apologize if we offended you, but I don't think we did anything offensive." Both of the great dragons shifted their gazes from the pets to him. Su Ping had an undying state cultivation anyway. He was one of the influential people, even in the tribes of the 12 sorcerer ancestors. The primitive Chaos clan. The two dragons had glittering eyes, already knowing of that clan's demise. They were the heaven's first target and were completely wiped out. It was surprising to see a survivor. It was true that not all rumors could be trusted. They're your subordinates. You may well be a survivor of the primitive Chaos clan, but your subordinates offended us, which is punishable by death, said one of the dragons. Su Ping raised his eyebrows and replied, "I just said that we didn't mean to offend you. If you consider resisting your dragon might is an offense, don't you think it's a bit too domineering? That's the rules of our clan. As someone in the undying state, you should know that," said one of the dragons with anger and dissatisfaction. "Those are the rules of your clan. They only apply to your clansmen. We have our rules too. One is to never bend or yield." Su Ping gazed at the host dragons with cold eyes. They were indeed seeking an alliance, but he didn't want to back down. What he needed was to be treated as equals, not to be bossed around. They carry the bloodlines of dragons, so they have to abide by the rules of the original dragons. One of the dragons said furiously, "All dragons derive from the original dragons. Have your seniors never told you that? Even so, they carry other bloodlines too. Even if they're dragons, they weren't raised by you, nor do they have to follow your rules," said Su Ping. "How talkative." One of the dragons became angry. "Don't come to us if you don't follow our rules. You would also be punished, if not for the fact that your clan was destroyed and your contribution to the resistance against the heavens." Su Ping's heart felt heavy. He didn't expect those dragons to be so strict about rules. The mere unwillingness to kneel was already a major offense. Such a hierarchical system was terrible. "Please don't be angry." The colorful bird didn't expect to have a conflict with the original dragons that quickly. She quickly said, "Perhaps they had no knowledge about those rules. Please forgive their first offense. I'll ask them to apologize." She also said to Su Ping telepathically, "Make your subordinates kneel and apologize right now. Break their horns and hand them over, then they'll probably let us off." Su Ping was stunned. He was so angry he could almost laugh. However, it was clear that she was sincerely trying to help him, although the price was rather hilarious. "Sorry, they're not just my subordinates, they are my friends, and I never make things difficult for my friends. They have their rules and I have mine. The original dragons' rules aren't the only things that matter," replied Su Ping telepathically. The massive bird was stunned, not expecting Su Ping to turn down her offer so decisively. She didn't think he had any reason to refuse. Subordinates, friends. Could subordinates really be friends? Besides, there was a major level gap between them. It was just a realm, but the difference in power was enormous. How could they be friends? "You don't be stupid. Where else can you go if you offend the original dragons? If you go and search another clan, you'll probably encounter the heavens on the way and you'll definitely die." The colorful bird tried to persuade him again. She really didn't want anything to happen to Su Ping. After all, he had done his best to help them, even though he didn't have to. She remembered the favor. "I know." Su Ping looked at the two dragons in the sky. Their oppressive and condescending aura was all too familiar. He suddenly felt sad. Equality would never be an option unless both parties had equal strength. That seemed to be the rule everybody had agreed upon. However, friendship was pure. Or rather, any kind of feeling was pure. Family, friendships, love. Did those things have anything to do with strength or status? If they did, would they still be pure? "I thought that gods were the most arrogant of all species. I didn't know that dragons were even more so." Su Ping chuckled lightly. He didn't feel angry anymore, just sad. He suddenly realized why the 12 sorcerer ancestors were incapable of defeating the heavens. It could have something to do with strength, but also because they were never united. Sorry. Su Ping flew away from the colorful bird's back, as an indication that his next actions would have nothing to do with her. I'd rather die before making things difficult for my friends. Besides, they did nothing wrong. The colorful bird was dazed. Su Ping flew with all of his pets to face the two dragons. He didn't stop until he was eye to eye with them. Chapter 1504, Dragon Prison 2. He turned his neck and said, "Sorry, my neck is uncomfortable. I don't like to look up at someone for too long. I only met the Hunyu clan on my way and asked them for a ride. I thought we could establish an alliance with you and figure out how to deal with the heavens. It never occurred to me that my friends would infuriate you." The two dragons were unhappy. However, they held back and said calmly, "Now that you know, it's time to give them away. We'll make them understand that the authority among dragons cannot be provoked." Su Ping shook his head and said, "Sorry, you didn't let me finish. What I mean is, I didn't know that my friends would infuriate you, but I'm very satisfied with their performance because they were capable of resisting your intimidation, even though they're only in the Tao heart state. I wonder if it's because you're too weak or they're too strong. Anyway, I'm proud of them." "You." The two dragons flew into a rage. What Su Ping said was a blatant provocation. The Inferno Dragon and the vast Sky Thunderous Dragon were both shivering, gritting their teeth and growling. Both were on the verge of tears when Su Ping said that he was proud of them. "Do you want the primitive Chaos Clan to be completely destroyed?" One of the dragons moved and emitted a suppressive aura to cover Su Ping. It looked down at Su Ping with a body almost as massive as a planet, just like staring at a grain of dust in the universe. "Unfortunately, you can't do that." Su Ping looked back with a smile. "I believe my friends will easily defeat you when they reach your level." "How dare you!" Outrageous. Both dragons were infuriated. Su Ping was more arrogant than they thought. That was the original dragon's territory, which was protected by a sorcerer ancestor. Even the primitive Chaos Clan sorcerer ancestor would have to tread with care if he were there. And yet, Su Ping was bold enough to make such a declaration in their territory. "Catch him. Send his subordinates to the dragon prison." The two dragons roared and charged at Su Ping and his pets. The colorful bird and the rest of the Hunyu clan were shocked. Their heads were already exploding when they saw Su Ping's reactions. They were on someone else's territory. They wanted to put a stop to this, but their telepathic voices were disrupted when entering the dragons' heads. The latter asked them to stay out of it. Meanwhile, Su Ping also told the colorful bird and the other ancestral gods to stay clear of the matter. He didn't want to implicate them. Boom! A battle burst out. Su Ping fought one of the dragons. He tried to connect to the power in the void. However, he couldn't find an anchor for his contract, and could only fight with his undying fire universe. The Chaos Dragon, being an undying state expert, had practiced ultimate Tao techniques and had the best bloodline. Su Ping felt pressured from the beginning and had to fall back. He was but mediocre among ancestral gods, since he couldn't draw support with his contract Tao heart. The fire universe was his only resource, whereas his opponent was one of the best. The difference was soon made evident. However, Su Ping had the primitive Chaos Clan constitution. It would be hard for his opponent to kill him quickly. The colorful bird and the other ancestral gods looked awful as they witnessed the fight. They would have stepped in if Su Ping hadn't told them to stay put via telepathically. Sure, their relationship with the original dragons would have been affected, but they could always patch it up when the sorcerer ancestor returned. They couldn't simply watch Su Ping, someone who had risked his life helping them, endure such a dangerous situation without doing anything. This won't do. The strength gap is too far apart. The colorful bird was troubled. Su Ping was no match for the Chaos Dragon at all. Furthermore, she discovered that something was off. Su Ping had never used the universe of original chaos, which was the core element of the primitive Chaos Clan. Instead, he was using a rather subpar fire universe. She suspected that the latter was hiding his strength and preparing for an eruption, but the ongoing situation made her think otherwise. What's going on? Isn't he a member of the primitive Chaos clan? Why isn't he using the universe of original Chaos? That way their power difference wouldn't be as great, even if he doesn't win in the end. He might even become stronger if it's coupled with his fire universe, said another Hun Yu ancestral god, who was just as anxious and puzzled. Su Ping's body had been torn apart hundreds of times by then. He was almost cornered, but he never used the universe of original Chaos. It never occurred to them that Su Ping didn't become an ancestral god with the universe of original Chaos. You're no match for me, stop. The massive dragon released his universe of chaos all of a sudden. The scary universe slithered quickly, entangling and imprisoning Su Ping. The creature stared at Su Ping and said, "If you weren't the last survivor, I would have asked your clan for an ultimate treasure as ransom. Humph! I'll give you a chance to avenge your clansmen on the battlefield after we reach an agreement with the Hun Yu clan to fight the heavens." Is that so? Coldness emanated from Su Ping's eyes. A terrifying amount of power erupted from his body, blowing up his opponent's universe. He punched, making a giant hole on the dragon's chest, ripping its body apart. The unexpected turn of events shocked all the Hun Yun clansmen who were about to take action. They all looked at Su Ping in disbelief. Their first thought was that Su Ping had found an opportunity to attack. However, they noticed that the fire universe was still behind his back, not the universe of original Chaos. What is going on? Why did he suddenly become so strong? The colorful bird was dumbfounded. She found that she could not see through Su Ping. In the void, the Chaos dragon's body was quickly reconstituted. It looked at Su Ping with shock and suspicion. Moments before, the power that erupted from the young fellow made it feel insignificant and defenseless. Was it my imagination? The original dragons were the fiercest and most brutal of the sorcerer ancestors' clans, with stronger physiques in comparison to those of the primitive Chaos clan. Su Ping turned around and looked at the other dragon. "Release my friends." The latter had already suppressed the Inferno dragon and the others, and kept them in its own universe of chaos. The pets were completely helpless before that top undying state existence. After all, it could slay ancestral gods, and was even stronger than the Chaos Perception Dragon. "Your friends will be punished in the dragon prison. You should thank us for not executing them directly." The dragon looked at Su Ping coldly. "We'll be happy to entertain if you keep on causing trouble. Don't blame us for ending the primitive Chaos clan." Su Ping's eyes were slightly cold, but he knew that continuing the fight was pointless. He had moved the fight closer to one of the continents just then, which allowed him to summon its power and turn the tables. Even if he had the strength to defeat the two dragons, more would come after defeating them. Even the original dragon's ancestor could make an appearance. "Release my friends and I'll go," said Su Ping. "It's impossible," said the dragon coldly. "I've sent them to the dragon prison. This is the lightest penalty for their insubordination." Anger flashed in Su Ping's eyes. He quickly searched through the pet bond and discovered that his partners were indeed somewhere distant and vague. Obviously, his opponent had teleported them away through its universe. "One day you will pay a price for your arrogance." Su Ping clenched his fists and glared at them. He then flashed and tore an opening in the void to teleport. The contract not only made it possible to summon pets, but to also to send oneself to where the pets were found, once a certain level was reached. But it was all on the premise that the pets would be masters for a moment, which required great trust. After all, the pets would be momentarily free from the contract during the process, and they could even control their masters with a thought. Chapter 1505, Thousands of Floors 1. The two Chaos Dragons examined the traces Su Ping had left after tearing the void and disappearing. The aura was very familiar. It was the dragon prison. However, only their clansmen could open that place. No one else could enter or leave without the bloodline permit granted by the clan. How did the guy do it? He dared to break into the dragon prison. That primitive chaos fellow is too arrogant. Humph. The dragon prison is not as simple as he thinks. Even undying state experts would be caged by it. He chose to brave danger for a few Tao Heart subordinates. I wonder whether it's loyalty or if he's just too cocky. Two dragon clones were instantly condensed inside the prison. Since he had voluntarily caged himself, they would keep him there and figure out how he managed to enter. Guys. The colorful bird saw Su Ping disappear. She didn't know where he went, but she knew that the original dragons wouldn't let him go easily. Remembering their conversation on the way, she couldn't hold back any longer. The primitive Chaos clan contributed to the resistance against the heavens, buying time for other clans to survive. Can you spare him? We will deal with the matter, said one of the Chaos dragons in a cold tone. He would never leave this place because of his rude behavior if he weren't from the primitive Chaos clan. The others sighed, knowing that trying to persuade them would be pointless. They had to wait for their sorcerer ancestor to return and help Su Ping. Don't let the rude guy affect the goodwill between our clans. Please come in, said the other Chaos dragon. They were indeed angry because of Su Ping's actions, but the primitive Chaos clan's sorcerer ancestor had died, making him the sole, yet unworthy survivor. On the other hand, the Hunyu clan was a whole different matter. Their ancestor was a tough figure among the 12 sorcerer ancestors. Besides, unity was very important in their current situation. Otherwise, all clans would follow the primitive Chaos clan's footsteps. In the meantime, inside the dragon prison, the sky was red with burning flames everywhere. However, the grounds were snowy. Everything was frozen, including light and time. Ice sculptures of dragons could be seen there. Those creatures were entirely frozen, but their souls were wide awake. They were eternally being tortured by the cold. Elsewhere on scorching black lands, there were magma springs everywhere, with enchained dragons soaking in them. They struggled in the scorching substance. Most were ice dragons vulnerable to heat. Their agony was extraordinary since they had been thrown to an environment completely opposite to their nature. Maybe they would slowly adapt over time, but the process would be excruciating. Is this the dragon prison? Su Ping could only see dragons being punished. However, the environment didn't affect him much. He glanced around and saw that the Inferno dragon was fighting some chains connected to the bottom of a pit. Their respective teleportation points had differed by thousands of kilometers. Su Ping had already noticed the reigning chaos inside. Time and space meant nothing there. A second in the outside world could represent several months in that prison. One step forward and he could stumble into a folded space, reappearing 1,000 kilometers away. Whoosh! Su Ping flashed and appeared right in front of his pets. He casually slashed the chain apart with a fire blade. The chain was made with the great Tao. Tao Heart experts would hardly make a dent on them. The color of chaos surfaced in Su Ping's eyes, allowing him to see through the illusion, and the prison was manifested in its original form. He was soon able to see the whole picture. What shocked Su Ping was that the dragon prison had thousands of floors and was currently housing an endless amount of lives, including those from other clans. The inner space was infinitely massive, practically on par with a grand universe. Underneath their feet was a deeper universe, which served as the prison's core. The great Tao's aura was the most abundant there. Su Ping's abilities merely allowed him to see a vague view. However, there were several undying state auras that were particularly eye-catching. Even undying state beings are kept as prisoners here. Is this how domineering sorcerer ancestors are? The undying state was at the top in any cultivation site, while they were treated as prisoners there. Bang! Just as Su Ping looked around, a crack in the sky was formed, and a figure as enormous as a cloud showed up. It was one of the Chaos dragons. However, it was a creature he hadn't met before. The new dragon had purple-gray scales and was emitting an intense aura of chaos. Its horns were as long as tentacles, with thick, interconnected membranes. It was quite the intimidating fellow. It looked down at Su Ping with cold, dark golden eyes. Member of the primitive Chaos clan, you've broken into the dragon prison. Your life may be spared if you stay here for 10,000 ancestral dragon cycles. Ancestral dragon cycles. One ancestral dragon cycle means the sleeping and waking pattern of an ancestral dragon, which is equal to 1,000 years. The system explained for Su Ping in a calm voice. The voice tone made Su Ping feel more confident. After the prison as a whole moments before, he realized it had to be the work of the original dragon's ancestor. It wasn't something that undying state beings could do. However, the system didn't panic, even in such conditions. This meant that, even if Su Ping was attacked by Yuan Long, the original dragon's sorcerer ancestor, the system would still be capable of taking him back to the store. With that in mind, he had nothing to worry about. He said to the Chaos Dragon, "You're judging me like a criminal. Your fellow dragons imprisoned my partners and violated my rules. I haven't made you pay for this yet." Humph noisy. The Chaos Dragon snorted, showing no interest in wasting time on Su Ping. After declaring Su Ping's sentence, it released dragon might, and a bloody badge appeared out of nowhere, spinning in the void with indescribable authority. Following that, the dragon prison shook and changed. Su Ping instantly noticed that the fuzzy space underneath him became clear and surrounded him. Roar! The Inferno Dragon and the others sensed that Su Ping was in danger. They roared and charged at the Chaos Dragon and the bloody badge, emitting an endless surge of authority. Their scales were collapsing, as they barely stood because of the bloodline pressure. Their bodies were falling apart, even as they were determined to fight back. Each of their cells were terrified because of the surmounting pressure, and were falling apart beyond their control. The bloody badge was even more intimidating. It caused their deepest fears to emerge from their blood, transcending everything. Their flesh fell apart as they rushed to attack. The scene was splendid and miserable. They wouldn't die, but Su Ping's eyes were still bloodshot. "Ah!" Su Ping roared and dashed over relentlessly. While swinging the giant sword, transformed from his blood and fury, he moved to slash the spinning bloody badge in the void. Boom! The sword shattered, and an illusory dragon with exceptionally vivid eyes appeared on the bloody badge. It seemed to be staring at Su Ping. All of Su Ping's fury and hot blood were becoming solid at that moment. It was as if some sort of freezing willpower had instantly enshrouded and frozen him. Su Ping was deprived of his senses, just as if his body would have been sent to another space, to then fall into a soundless darkness. By the time he regained his senses, he found that he had already fallen into the dragon prison's fuzzy floor, where several undying state prisoners were caged. Su Ping's senses were recovering. The world before his eyes was almost completely dark. Dark red spots could be seen every now and then. He could vaguely tell that there were some dark figures fixated to the void, as if pinned into place. "Break!" Su Ping roared, gathering his aura and blood into a sword. He detonated his undying universe to slash with full force. However, the attack was useless. He roared and swung his sword dozens of times in a row. His mind was exhausted. His undying universe could be infinitely reconstituted, but his mental strength would be difficult to recover. A loud voice was heard on Su Ping's left, which belonged to an undying state figure. "Haha, it's useless. Even I am incapable of breaking out. This is a universe personally constructed by the original dragon's ancestor. In other words, this is his universe, the combination of thousands of universes. Each can summon the power of 100 other universes. This means that you have to break 100 universes with one strike. Nobody can do that except for the sorcerer ancestors." They could vaguely feel the presence of the other. However, there seemed to be an infinite distance in between, and they couldn't see each other. Chapter 1506, Sorcerer Ancestors Universe 1. Break 100 universes. Su Ping's expression changed a bit. Such a task would equate to increasing his strength 100-fold. Considering undying state experts, even the tiniest improvement would require 10,000 years of consolidation. Epiphanies were insignificant from that point onwards. Furthermore, time was no longer relevant. 10,000 years was just a measuring unit. Making progress in 10,000 years was worth celebrating. No wonder the guy who sent the telepathic message sounded crazy. He probably was beyond desperate. Let me try again. Su Ping gathered his strength again. This time, he was going to use a contract with the power of that world. He was soon able to perceive a vague consciousness of the land as the contract Tao heart began to spread. It wasn't a weak entity, but they seemed to be infinitely far apart. However, if he could feel it, he could link to it. The next moment, he made contact with that consciousness. The vague and weak feeling instantly became clear. However, it responded by flooding towards him with fury. Boom! Su Ping's mind trembled and collapsed, almost falling apart completely. However, the mental shards managed to gather once more in the end. It refused me. Su Ping was shocked and infuriated. His contract was rejected. The sentience of that world was unwilling to help. It dawned on him. Damn it, this is the dragon prison. That consciousness probably belongs to sorcerer ancestor Yuan Long. He was regretful and angry. That was the first time making contact with the sorcerer ancestor. He could have died if not for his willpower having long exceeded the normal undying state. He knows I'm from the primitive Chaos clan, and yet he still tried to kill me. This sorcerer ancestor is not easy to deal with. He doesn't show any respect for the people of the primitive Chaos clan. But then again, the primitive Chaos clan sorcerer ancestor is already dead. He doesn't have to give us any face anymore. Su Ping gritted his teeth. It was impossible to break free with the power of his fire universe alone. Could it be that he could only return to his store? Or maybe, should he kill himself and leave by resurrecting in a random place? But that was the sorcerer ancestor's universe. Could he leave this place through random resurrection? Su Ping silently asked the system in his heart. Nope, the system quickly replied. The range of random resurrection is limited. Ancestor Yuan Long's dragon prison contains thousands of universes. It's more than 10 times larger than the Archean divinity. You cannot possibly reach its boundary however many times you resurrect. The center and the border of this world change places all the time. It's impossible for you to escape. 10 times bigger than the Archean divinity. Su Ping was dumbfounded. This is just a universe that sorcerer ancestor Yuan Long established, and it's more than 10 times bigger than the Archean divinity. It had to be noted that Su Ping would need a whole day to traverse the whole Archean divinity. There were many dangerous places that even he wouldn't dare enter recklessly. This is the power of a sorcerer ancestor. No wonder it's an inborn power that can't be cultivated. The combination of thousands of universes. For the first time, Su Ping realized the gap between sorcerer ancestors and undying state experts. That explained the existence of only 12 sorcerer ancestors in history. There had been countless geniuses since the beginning of time. Ancestral gods were at the top, but there were 100 of them in the Archean divinity, and more than 10,000 in all of the system's cultivation sites. However, only 12 sorcerer ancestors had ever existed. So in other words, I can only return to the store and come back again, asked Su Ping. The system said, that's the only way, unless you can instantly break 100 universes on your own. Su Ping took a deep breath and said, let me give it a try then. The system slowly popped a question mark in Su Ping's head. I've already paid 100 million energy points to visit this site. I can't just go back like this. I came to this cultivation site to train. I was never desperate when I entered the chaotic realm of the undead as a mere mortal, and I certainly won't act desperate now. Su Ping then started cultivating in earnest. However, there was no great Tao or energy on the dragon prison's floor. It was impossible to cultivate. How did it go? Given up already? Like I said, it's impossible. You're from the primitive Chaos clan, right? Pray that your ancestor comes to save you. The loud voice laughed hysterically. Su Ping calmed down and asked, which clan are you from? Me? I'm from the Hayashin clan, the strongest of the 12 sorcerer ancestors' clans, declared the loud voice proudly. Su Ping asked, "Is Hayashin one of the 12 sorcerer ancestors too? Why didn't your ancestor save you? And why were you imprisoned in the first place?" "My ancestor loves sleeping. He'll come to my rescue once he wakes up. We will surely kill the original dragon's ancestor when the time comes," the loud voice sneered. "I just hooked up with a few original dragons. Speaking of which, they seduced me first. I should be the one demanding an explanation from them." Su Ping didn't expect such a reason. He asked with a weird expression, "Do they also have strict rules for that?" The loud voice suddenly chuckled and said, "Why, do you want to try it out as well? You should if you have a chance when we get out. I'm sure you won't forget the taste. Dragon liver in particular is the most delicious of all. You'll never forget the taste." Dazed, Su Ping asked, "Oh, you mean you eat them?" "Of course. Isn't it normal to eat them after having enough fun with them?" said the loud voice. Su Ping was lost for words. He suddenly realized he was judging the guy according to a human lifestyle. Morals didn't matter to those mythical creatures. They had their own code of conduct. For instance, original dragons sentenced his pets to death just because they didn't kneel. That was their own code of conduct. It was ridiculous for humans. However, human morals were probably just as ridiculous to them. "What about you? Why were you imprisoned here?" asked the Hayashin expert. "Maybe because I'm too handsome," said Su Ping. He had no patience to explain because he thought it was ridiculous, so he offered an equally hilarious reply. "I think you're quite ugly," said the Hayashin fellow. Su Ping rolled his eyes and replied, "Just because of that I won't take you away after I break out from this place." "Ha ha ha, you want to escape? Come on, show me how it's done." The undying state guy started laughing. Su Ping preferred not to waste time on the fellow. He simply sat cross-legged and cultivated. Another voice was heard. It was gentle and soothing. "Brother from the primitive Chaos clan, ignore that lunatic. Not only did he eat original dragons, he also committed felonies in his own clan. That's why his sorcerer ancestor will never bail him out. He will be eternally caged here. He will never age or die, and he'll be tortured forever." Su Ping raised his brows and asked, "Who are you?" "I am Yan Tai from the Haixian clan. Have you heard about us before?" asked the voice. "Nope. Our clans once fought side by side. Come here, stay away from that lunatic. Sometimes he snaps and wreaks havoc. You don't want to get injured by him," said Yan Tai. Su Ping frowned a bit. He wanted to cultivate and would rather not be disturbed. "Okay." Su Ping instantly flew toward the source of the voice. The Hayashin clan fellow noticed Su Ping's movement and quickly said, "Hey, why are you going that way? That's a guy from the Haixian clan. They love eating people of their level." "Huh?" Su Ping paused. "Don't listen to his nonsense. He lost his mind a long time ago," said Yan Tai gently. The former stayed where he was, then stared at the gentle guy who was also blurry. He obviously was fixated to the spot like the guy from the Hayashin clan. Su Ping shook his head and said, "Thank you for your kindness. I'll just stay here. It's good to keep some distance from both of you." "If you believe his crap, don't blame me for not having warned you when you suffer," said Yan Tai with a sigh. Su Ping stayed silent. The gentle guy didn't send more telepathic messages. "Didn't you say you were going to break out from this place? Show me." The Hayashin fellow shouted earnestly, seeing that Su Ping had sat down. Su Ping frowned and set up a barrier around him, blocking the guy's noises. Then he focused his consciousness upon himself. At first he wasn't planning on walking the primitive Chaos clan's path. However, his current cultivation method wouldn't be bound by the great Tao of the primitive Chaos clan. His plan was to completely fuse the 108 Tao glyphs in his body. That was the advantage of the bloodline heritage left by the sorcerer ancestor. Just by fusing and combining Tao glyphs would enable him to enter the undying state and become only second to sorcerer ancestors. However, no matter how strong the undying state experts were, they were absolutely vulnerable when facing the ultimate experts. Chapter 1507, the third strongest in all worlds 1. The 108 original Tao glyphs were quickly decomposed in Su Ping's consciousness. There was an abundant surge of chaos aura as the glyphs were melted. The universe of original chaos appeared when the Tao glyphs were almost fused. The 108 Tao glyphs were completely fused, and the chaos universe pushed the fire universe behind Su Ping's back. The two universes collided, as if fighting for the core position. The chaos universe gained the upper hand soon after. After all, it came from the 12 sorcerer ancestors. It wasn't something a single fire universe could resist. Su Ping tried to control them, but there was nothing he could do, just as regular mortals were incapable of splitting one of their cells with willpower alone. It seems that the power of my fire universe is being blocked. He was having trouble drawing power from his fire universe, which had been completely suppressed by the chaos universe. It was only capable of emitting a measly bit of power. It would be negligible for undying state battles. Good thing I didn't condense the universe of original chaos at first. Otherwise, its pressure would have made it impossible to condense more universes. Su Ping secretly felt lucky. His road to advance would have been completely blocked otherwise, unless he spent a long time completely changing his bloodline and dismembering the chaos universe and descend to the Tao heart state to start all over. However, this would be difficult, and it would take him a very long time. Su Ping tried working with the universe of original chaos again. A terrifying amount of power was instantly released, which tore the isolating barrier he had made with the fire universe and continued to sweep across the void. The guy from the Hayashin clan was still shouting, "Hey, hey, you haven't given up yet, break out for me." Su Ping automatically ignored the fellow's ranting. He was shocked by his newfound power. No wonder it completely suppressed my fire universe. The universe of original chaos is at least 5 times stronger. It was noteworthy to say that the tiniest gap in the undying universe realm could determine the outcome of a battle. A 5-fold gap was like comparing a brawny man and a child. He could easily kill the other party. This is the universe of the chaos ancestors, bloodline, which is the best of all clans. My current power is enough to crush all ancestral gods in the Archean divinity. There wouldn't be a need to use a contract, Su Ping speculated. He even thought that the Chaos Perception Dragon was probably no longer a match for him. Adding the contract power, he felt he was definitely among the very best ancestral gods. "System, do you know my ranking among all undying state experts in history?" asked Su Ping in his heart. The system replied calmly, "In terms of comprehensive strength, the third." The third. Su Ping was rather shocked. He thought he would be the best or second best. However, there were still 2 experts stronger than him. How is it possible? In terms of universe, I carry one of the chaos ancestors' bloodline, which is the best. Not even the mythical creatures from the other 12 clans amount to much when comparing with my current condition. If we add the powers of contract and those of my pets, I can definitely win against the 2 chaos dragons and even kill them instantly. After a moment of silence, the system replied, "In a way, you have indeed surpassed those mythical creatures. Now you're only second to the sorcerer ancestors themselves. However, the ones stronger than you are special." Special? Remember what I told you before. I was bound to someone else in the past. Su Ping instantly understood. "You bitch." "Watch your tongue," said the system rigorously. Su Ping almost felt a stinging pain and was a little bit surprised. The system had never been as angry when he cursed before. It seemed to be seriously pissed. He discovered that the system was becoming increasingly human-like as the store was upgraded, or emotional. It was more and more like a real living creature, and not just an AI. "Sorry, I apologize. So in other words, I'm your weakest host." Su Ping felt rather helpless. He always thought that his performance was good, never thinking that he would actually be weaker than the system's previous hosts. The idea made him feel uncomfortable and even a little bit jealous. "It's not your fault." The system calmed down, then said with a snort, "You've done a good job. It's my problem. I didn't give you the proper resources." "That doesn't sound like an apology," said Su Ping. His disappointment faded away, knowing that the system never lied. This could only mean that his performance wasn't too bad. He then asked, "What about those two guys? Cultivation-wise, I think I'm already the strongest that anyone can become, right? The one who ranks first obtains the chaos qualification, and once it's absorbed, they will become a new sorcerer ancestor," said the system. "Therefore, they would have the power to crush undying state experts and to generate 1,000,000 illusory universes." Su Ping did not know what to say. "Well, fine, I admit defeat. Don't they say that the 12 sorcerer ancestors are fixed?" Su Ping finally asked after a long time. The system said, "Only the number is fixed." "In other words, the members can be replaced?" asked Su Ping immediately. "The chaos qualification is the sorcerer ancestor's secret. Whoever gets it becomes a sorcerer ancestor." "That's right," said the system, "and a sorcerer ancestor happened to perish back then." Su Ping knew it was a truly lucky situation. He thought he was already lucky as things were. When compared to the real sons of destiny, he was just an ordinary person who had to earn everything through hard work. "What about the second strongest?" "He established a contract with a sorcerer ancestor," replied the system. Su Ping was greatly shocked again. One of them scooped up the chaos qualification, and the other made a contract with a sorcerer ancestor. No wonder they were the two strongest amongst all clans throughout history. Him fuzzing about being third was a bit too much. He was actually dozens of times weaker than those two when they were at his level. "So this is what it feels like to have a cheat," Su Ping sighed, completely convinced. "Where are they? When are you going to introduce us?" He wanted to find out what those two looked like. "They're already gone," whispered the system with obvious sadness in its voice. Dazed, Su Ping suddenly realized he had asked the wrong question. Why would the system pick a new host if those two were alive? "So they're both dead. They were so strong and they had your help, but they still died in the end. Were they killed by the heavens?" asked Su Ping. After a moment of silence, the system replied, "If I say yes, would you be afraid of fighting the heavens?" "Of course not," replied Su Ping without missing a beat. "If I don't fight, I will regret it for the rest of my life. If I fight, the worst outcome is death. It's not the length of life that matters, but the way you choose to live." He then changed the topic. "You've been training me just so I can fight the heavens someday, right? So, you're probably the heavens' nemesis. Maybe you were a victim, too. You will know everything and see the real me when you unlock the level 9 store," said the system. "Just as I thought." Su Ping heaved a soft sigh. He had already realized that everything had an origin, including his system, when he saw the real universe through the Golden Crow's ancestors' memories. Furthermore, the Earth he transmigrated from was just one of those planets. It just so happened to be shockingly similar to the blue planet from the Federation. The overall history and the Industrial Revolution were similar in many aspects. After all, there were countless planets and countless universes. It wouldn't be too difficult to find two identical planets. "I hope you'll answer everything for me," said Su Ping. Unlocking the store's level 9 wasn't too hard. He believed he would soon know all the secrets. The system simply fell silent. Su Ping dropped the topic. Whatever might happen in the future, his own strength would always be his most reliable asset. He could only rely on himself, and that wouldn't change because of the environment. So, whenever you feel uncertainty or don't know what to do, just try your best and improve yourself. Bang! Su Ping detonated the original Chaos Universe, then gathered his essence and blood to slash furiously again. The dazzling sword aura illuminated the dark dragon prison. The other prisoners were visible for a moment, but Su Ping simply focused on the edge of the sword. The sword aura disappeared like a stone falling into the ocean. It failed to break the floor. "Ha ha ha, you want to break it just like that. I have to admit, your attack was more powerful than before, but did you really think you could break free so easily?" The guy from the Hayashin clan laughed crazily. There was muffled laughter coming from other places. The others present also deemed Su Ping's behavior as too stupid. They had tried many things, but all of them gave up in the end. Tearing through 100 universes was the bare minimum. And that was just a theoretical way to escape. No one had ever achieved such a feat. Su Ping's eyes were deep. Without a word, he set up a barrier and sat cross-legged once more. The power of his chaos universe had indeed fallen short. It wasn't even close. The fire universe has been too badly suppressed. If I can invoke the power of both universes, their power will double. Unfortunately, the chaos universe is too domineering. Su Ping tried to activate the fire universe again. Again, only a tiny bit of power was able to leak out. It was pointless. Good thing I condensed the universe of fire before. At least it created an opening for me. If I condense other undying universes and have them balance each other out, I'll be able to control them all. Su Ping felt lucky again. He stood up and looked at the other prisoners. I will need a lot of great Taos in order to condense other undying universes. Unfortunately, my body and power will be gone every time I resurrect. Otherwise, I can just leave countless great Taos and then resurrect to absorb them. That way, I'd be able to condense an undying universe very quickly. Since he couldn't consume himself, he could only rely on the power of the other prisoners to condense new undying universes. Su Ping said, I can leave this place, but not without your cooperation. Ha, you're still dreaming. How are you going to leave? The Haitian guy laughed. Just ignore him. Tell me, what do you want? Said Yantai gently. Su Ping replied with a calm expression. I need you to release your great Taos and let me absorb them. I have to take in all of your power. You want to absorb our great Taos? Yantai was clearly stunned, obviously not expecting that he would outright say what she had always been trying to do. Can this really be said so casually? I think you're the crazy one. The guy from the Haitian clan laughed. Chapter 1508, The Most Scorching Dragon Soul 1. I'm serious. I hope you can consider this seriously, said Su Ping. I didn't know that the people from the primitive Chaos clan were so funny these days. The Haitian guy laughed. Yantai smiled and said, Fine, I'm willing to lend it to you, just come over. Not interested, leave your craziness for someone else. I'm going to sleep. FCK off. All the other prisoners uttered dissatisfied remarks, thinking that Su Ping was just making a scene and disturbing the peace. None of them wanted to bother with his antics anymore. Su Ping looked around and narrowed his eyes. I was just discussing matters with you, and you think I'm just too nice. If you're unwilling to cooperate, I can only impose and fetch them myself. What's the meaning of this? Humph, come and have a try. The prisoners felt Su Ping's hostile attitude, which made them even angrier. The latter ignored them and flew straight to where Yantai was. She chuckled and said, All right, I'll cooperate with you. Su Ping crossed infinite time and space, feeling he had traveled half a universe before he finally reached her. He couldn't help but get the chills when he saw her appearance. The pleasant, soft-spoken Yantai turned out to be an enormous monster with the body of an elephant body and the head of an octopus. She stank like the guts of a fish. She chuckled and said pitifully, Don't be scared by my appearance. I wasn't like this before I was punished in the dragon prison. Su Ping ignored what she said and flew straight to her. Very good. Yantai's breath became heavy, conveying a strange enchantment. She shivered the moment he moved closer. Even more decomposed fluids were excreted from her shivering body. She raised her head, showing her hideous teeth and crimson eyes while her voice became sharp and deranged. Great. It's been years since I've tasted primitive Chaos Clan flesh. Come on, give it to me. She shrieked and swung her tentacles, quickly surrounding our hero. At the same time, a black and twisted universe rose and surrounded him. A strong binding force was manifested. Su Ping felt as if he were inside a deep ocean. The effect slowed him down. What do you want? Su Ping asked calmly, his expression impassive. Yantai was obviously stunned for a moment before she shouted with an eerie tone, Your blood. All right. He quickly agreed, which stunned her yet again. This puzzled her for a moment, wondering if there was something wrong with the guy's brain. How could he descend to madness right after entering the prison? But the next moment, a bloody, dazzling light appeared, and a red and clear edge was gathered in Su Ping's hand. Meanwhile, the original universe surfaced behind Su Ping's back and instantly exploded, its power pouring into the edge. Here you are. Su Ping suddenly swung his sword and slashed the target furiously. You're asking to be killed. Yan Tai let out an angry shriek. Her black universe also exploded. A dark and corrosive fog was abundantly produced by her body. Su Ping's sword was quickly melted upon making contact with the fog, just like ice entering boiling water. He didn't stop, however. He continued slashing down ruthlessly. Bang! The edge of the sword sliced through the fog and struck Yan Tai's body, inflicting a massive wound. Su Ping's own body was also corrupted by the fog and showed signs of decay. He had the tough chaos body, and yet it was still rotting. Do you want to die? Yan Tai roared furiously. Although the undying state realm implied the inability to perish, it only applied to their universes. Killing them was possible if they were too badly hurt or were restrained somehow. Some of the top undying state experts happened to master skills, which allowed them to execute their peers. Yan Tai had been imprisoned for killing other undying state experts. That was why she had dared to lure Su Ping over to eat him. What's so scary about death? Su Ping asked back. He expressionlessly slashed again, causing gaps in the fog. Although considered the third strongest in the undying realm according to the system, that was only considering all his capabilities. At the moment, he could only harness his chaos universe. He couldn't draw power from his contract Dao Heart or his pets. In terms of combat ability, he was at the top tier among undying state experts of all clans. However, he was only average when only considering the 12 sorcerer ancestors' clans. Yan Tai, on the other hand, was a bad ass in those clans. That was why she was caged in the dragon prison. Bang bang. Su Ping attacked time and again, not caring about his own life. He was seriously wounded already. Yan Tai's power had been mostly drained by then. Her being fixated in the void was a fortunate condition. Su Ping would have long been defeated otherwise. Damn it, why wasn't he punished by the dragon prison? Yan Tai was really angry. At first she was delighted to find he wasn't restricted and could move freely, thinking it was the ancestors' gaff she could profit from, thus getting a chance to eat him to strengthen herself and at least send a message to her clan, even if she couldn't break free. However, this freedom allowed him to attack however he wanted to, while she on the other hand was restrained. Are you truly not scared of death? Yan Tai saw that Su Ping was absolutely defenseless and wouldn't dodge even if she was about to kill him. She had never seen such a madman before. He was even crazier than Hayashin Fellow. Chapter 1509, The Most Scorching Dragon Soul 2. Bang! Yan Tai was answered by Su Ping's blade. The other prisoners fell silent when they saw the battle. Su Ping's ruthlessness was an eye-opener for them. It was a first for them to see that the primitive Chaos clan, which was known for their gentleness, had such a brutal member. He's even crazier than the crazy original dragon, mumbled the guy from the Hayashin clan. Yan Tai is truly unlucky. Even if she kills him, she'll be badly wounded too. Maybe I'll have a chance to taste her someday, one of the undying state prisoners remarked. The battle lasted a long time, until Su Ping was finally exhausted. Rot in hell. Once she noticed that Su Ping couldn't hold on for much longer, Yan Tai went on a rampage and ripped his body to pieces, splashing his blood in the void. She didn't give him a chance to beg for mercy, as she simply vented her fury. It's over. The other prisoners were surprised to see Su Ping's vitality aura disappeared. They had thought that he had some trump cards, considering how fiercely he was fighting, but there were none. Have we been caged for too long that the world outside has changed? Even the primitive Chaos clan has gone crazy. Huh. Before the prisoners finished discussing, the extinct aura reappeared. All the blood disappeared, and Su Ping's figure was condensed once more. Come again. Su Ping's eyes were cold. He detonated his chaos universe and fought desperately, just like before. Yantai narrowed her eyes and lost her cool. This is impossible. She was absolutely certain Su Ping had died. There was no way for him to resurrect, yet there he was. The higher one's level, the more truths would be revealed, and the more stable their world views would be. So, shock and fear would hit them harder when something blew their minds. The other prisoners were also dumbfounded, looking at the battle in disbelief. Everything felt like an illusion, but they believed in their senses. Death, while in the undying state, was irreversible. Not even sorcerer ancestors could do anything about it. And yet, the guy resurrected. Could it be that everything was an illusion, and we were all tricked? When ruling out all the impossible, what remained, however unbelievable, was a fact. They could only conclude that they had been tricked by Su Ping with some sort of ability, and that he never truly died. While the prisoners were still coping with the shock, Su Ping was back at it again, battling against Yan Tai. Bang! Bang! Time flew. There was no concept of time inside the dragon prison. However, Su Ping knew that 2 weeks had passed, based on the time flow in his inner universe. During that time, he had used up 3 lives, finally killing Yan Tai of the Haixian clan in the end. Yes, he killed her. If not for her being locked in space and the prison's weakening effect, it would have taken me 10 lives to achieve this. Is every top expert from the sorcerer ancestors' clans like this? Su Ping held Yan Tai's body and swallowed it. All his pores opened up to absorb Yan Tai's great Tao and improve his condition. The second undying universe he was planning to condense was the universe of illusion. That was also the second small world he had established. The perfected Tao of illusion began to grow in the depths of his original universe at a fast pace, once a considerable amount of great Tao fragments were absorbed. Such a development was much faster than when the Tao of fire was formed. The great Tao in Yan Tai's body fell apart into countless pieces, and Su Ping absorbed them all. The dragon prison was absolutely quiet. Only the sound of Su Ping assimilating Yan Tai's body could be heard. If it were possible to see them, the prisoners' faces would show ashen expressions. They saw how Yan Tai had begged for mercy and perished, and they knew that they could share the same fate. At the moment, they weren't in the mood to figure out why Su Ping could resurrect indefinitely. Instead, they cursed the original dragons for not restraining the guy from the primitive Chaos clan. They would basically be screwed if that monster was allowed to roam free. The formerly loud Haitian fellow was also silent. It was in that quiet environment that Su Ping assimilated Yan Tai's flesh, absorbing her essence and great Tao. His aura became increasingly powerful, deep like an abyss. He skimmed through Yan Tai's memories and realized why those people were so brutal. So the easiest way to improve was to feed on beings in the same cultivation realm. He resumed his cultivation after he was done eating. 2 weeks later, the undying universe of illusion took shape. 2 months later, the new undying universe of illusion was completely condensed. Fortunately, the fire universe created an opening which allowed me to transfer the pieces of great Tao to the illusion Tao. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to condense another universe. Once the undying universe became active, it began to radiate a power that joined forces with the fire universe to counter the universe of original chaos. The previous opening was instantly widened, as if there was an arm. However, the combined effort of those universes was still not enough to overthrow the pressure from the universe of original chaos. He couldn't even invoke the power of his 3 universes at the same time. As expected of the power from one of the sorcerer ancestors' bloodlines, looks like a balance can only be reached until I master at least 2 more universes. Su Ping took a deep breath and finished Yan clan's remaining flesh. His body was then improved, while also inheriting some of the Haixian clan's morphing abilities. The Haixian clan excelled in shapeshifting, just like golden crows were good with flames. That strange power could be very useful in battle. Su Ping had experienced the shapeshifting effect firsthand when facing Yan Tai, as she killed him using a different form each time. Those transformations had been truly complex. The morphing power was also useful for concealment. The Haixian clan had the best lurking abilities among all the 12 sorcerer ancestors' clans. That was why Yan Tai was able to ambush many other undying state mythical creatures. Su Ping stood up and looked at the other prisoners. Without saying a word, he approached the fellow from the Hayashin clan. "You nutcase, what are you doing?" said the guy quickly. After seeing how serious Su Ping had acted while eating Yan Tai, he was a little bit scared. Most importantly, half his combat ability was being restrained by the dragon prison, which would leave him at a huge disadvantage. He would be worn out to death. "I'll be bailing you out from the dragon prison." Su Ping strode towards him, through my stomach. "No, I don't want to leave. Don't come any closer," cried the guy from the Hayashin clan. The other prisoners' eyelids twitched as they witnessed the situation. It would probably be their turn once he was done with the fellow. Once he saw that Su Ping wasn't planning on stopping, the Hayashin guy roared furiously, "Original dragons, are you blind? Can't you see what's going on here?" Sounds of tremors were heard coming from the ceiling, as if in response to what he said. Su Ping stopped and craned his head, only to detect a few extremely familiar auras. The void inside the prison floor was split open, and a few figures dashed out. They were none other than the Inferno Dragon and his other pets. Su Ping was dazed. The Hayashin fellow was also taken aback. He said in shock, "Damn, why were Dowheart guys thrown here?" The other prisoners were just as stunned as they looked at the junior newcomers. Are these creatures snacks? They had been caged for a long time, and the original dragon's ancestor had never provided such a service. "You!" Su Ping didn't expect the Inferno Dragon and the others to show up. "Roared!" A furious call instantly echoed throughout the entire prison floor. The Inferno Dragon was ablaze with scorching black flames. A vague shadow appeared on its back, which was its burning soul. The beast instantly saw his master and flew over with hot tears flowing. "We found you." They rushed to meet him. They seemed to be only a few thousand meters apart, but they were located in different spaces. However, the pets broke through and soon arrived where Su Ping was. Chapter 15:10, Dragon Ancestor 1. "How did you get in?" Su Ping was surprised. They were still in the lesser Dowheart state. How had they managed to reach the prison's deepest floor? "Boss, if you're in danger, how can we not be by your side?" The dark dragon hound grinned. Su Ping narrowed his eyes as he inspected the fellow. All his pets were riddled in wounds. Without a doubt, they had been through unimaginable battles to get there. "Did you get here on your own?" The purple python wriggled and said, "We broke through the dragon pit and came here." The cracked scales on its mountainous body had fallen off. There was also a corrosive power eating away its flesh. Su Ping waved a hand to drive away the remaining Tao power, afflicting them to heal their wounds. He clenched his fist tightly, as he noticed how delighted they were despite their grievous wounds. "Boss, let's break out of this dragon prison together," said the dark dragon hound. Its eyes were glittering with fighting will. Our hero glanced at the Inferno Dragon. It had already resorted to burning its soul, and its vitality was still burning irreversibly. Fortunately, resurrecting was an option. "It's easy to get all the way down from the top, but it's hard to leave once you're here," said Su Ping. "No matter how difficult it is, we'll be by your side," said the dark dragon hound. "All right." Su Ping took a deep breath and walked to the undying state fellow from the Hayashin clan. "Help me kill them. I will absorb their power. Let's break out of the dragon prison. I will make the original dragons learn that a real dragon doesn't have to bend to anyone." Roared! The Inferno Dragon bellowed. Its furious and scorching eyes were like suns that pierced through everything, while its power surged and its dragon soul burned brighter. The scalding light of life was affecting the other prisoners, making all the mythical creatures feel the burn. Roared! The Inferno Dragon roared again with an even louder sound, which echoed throughout the dragon prison. It became even bigger, along with an expanding aura. Su Ping couldn't help but stop and look back in surprise. Their mutual bond allowed him to feel his pet's determination and unparalleled pride. After a boom, something seemed to have broken free. The violent power erupted from the Inferno dragon's body. A black and red universe appeared behind its back. It seemed to have absorbed an infinite amount of power, which made it shake. Then, under everyone's gazes, it suddenly exploded. The exploding universe produced an endless amount of power that filled the pet dragon's body. The dragon flew up and roared once more. All its broken scales were quickly regenerated, and its necrotized flesh was healing at a fast pace. Even the irreversibly burning soul died out at the moment. However, even though the dragon's soul had died out, the aura emitted was even more terrifying than before. It was like a vicious, abyssal dragon, awakening and looking at the human world. The broken black and red universe was reconstituted and condensed in its mouth, before it was thrown toward the prison walls like a wave of light. When the light flashed, the dark dragon prison seemed to be illuminated for a brief moment. From somewhere in the invisible depths came the sound of the pet's universe exploding. However, the power didn't spread out. It was still absorbed by the dragon prison. Su Ping looked at the Inferno dragon in a daze, never thinking it would break the shackles and enter the undying state in that place. The Inferno dragon gradually calmed down as it released the power. Its enormous body wriggled in the void, having already grown as massive as a planet, in no way inferior to the pair of chaos dragons. Its mouth seemed large enough to swallow half a planet. Its red iron-like body emitted an infinite sense of power. Su Ping looked up at his pet. After overcoming the initial shock, he only felt proud and happy for the Inferno dragon. Seriously, this dragon carries so many bloodlines and is still able to unify all the great Tao. There are so many different types of power. How exactly was the guy able to combine them? This dragon seems to be his companion. Damn it, he's even harder to stop now. All the prisoners felt puzzled and frightened. Su Ping was already tricky enough to deal with as it was, and now he had an undying state dragon as a partner. They were all immobilized by the dragon prison and were incapable of hiding. They would surely be swallowed by Su Ping, one by one. "This guy is faster than us again," mumbled the dark dragon hound as he looked at the Inferno dragon, but there was delight in its eyes. They had been stuck in the Tao heart state for too long, and knew how difficult it was to break the last shackle. It was something that they could probably never achieve in the rest of their lives. Since their dragon partner had made a breakthrough, all of the pets felt happy about it. "We must hurry to catch up," said the vast sky thunderous dragon, unwilling to give in. "I will also unify all the great Tao someday." The purple python felt confident, as it was no longer the tiny python it used to be. Having fought many creatures with Su Ping, it had transformed completely and had an unparalleled resolve. After calming down, Su Ping said to the Inferno dragon, "Try to fight by yourself. Get familiar with your current power." He pointed at the guy from the Hayashin clan. The Inferno dragon understood what he meant. It roared and charged at the fellow. Seeing that, the Hayashin guy quickly said, Hey, don't come over. We admit defeat." However, the dragon didn't care, simply releasing dragon aura and attacking. The fight began soon after. Su Ping was then able to see what the guy looked like. It was an enormous, oval-shaped creature with countless pairs of arms, which turned out to be sharp blades. His body was pinned to a spot and couldn't move freely. His only option was to fight. He swung his arms and sent the Inferno dragon flying. Su Ping was definitely shocked. The Hayashin fellow was shockingly strong. He could probably punch a hole in the grand universe with a finger and pierce through a couple of small universes with a single strike. After forcing the dragon to retreat, the Hayashin guy roared, "I don't want to kill you. Stay back." The Inferno dragon, however, ignored him and simply attacked in various ways. The Hayashin guy was furious. Having no time to worry about Su Ping, he quickly gathered all his arms and formed two enormous hands, which grabbed the Inferno dragon's wings and ripped them apart. The arms acted like sharp blades and slashed the dragon into countless pieces. Su Ping narrowed his eyes. as the fellow was indeed tough, one of the best among the undying state experts from the 12 sorcerer ancestors' clans. There was still a major gap between the Inferno dragon and him. However, the dragon's body was soon reconstituted. It wouldn't die so easily. The beast continued attacking the Hayashan fellow. "Damn it, you're clearly not one of the original dragons. Why are you so tricky to deal with?" The Hayashan clan guy was angry. His body was restrained, making it hard to kill that dragon. Once he noticed that the dragon was done testing, Su Ping immediately stepped forward. "Let's attack him together." Hulu. The Hayashan fellow became anxious the moment he saw that Su Ping would also take action. He quickly said, "I admit defeat. I'll give you the great Tao pieces you wanted. I'll cooperate." Too late. Su Ping didn't stop. He released his universe of original chaos and attacked. The fellow was soon defeated under the coordinated attacks. Then they dug out the great Tao power from his body. Su Ping absorbed the power as he fought. The third universe he planned to condense was the Tao of Origin, which he had perceived while being in the Federation. The Tao of Origin grew as it absorbed the power, even though it had already been perfected. Su Ping simply fused with the Inferno dragon, which was the first time ever merging with an undying state creature. A violent power instantly surged in his body. Su Ping felt as if there were another universe inside his body. The two powers fused. It wasn't a simple multiplication, but an improvement in different aspects. Su Ping's body became magnificent. Tiny scales grew all over, giving him a terrifying look. He had the power to shatter the universe by simply waving a hand. The prisoners couldn't be more shocked. One of them shouted, "What kind of power is this? It's impossible for undying state beings to improve their powers like this. Impossible." Fusion, that dragon sacrificed itself. It abandoned its own fate. That's so stupid. It had just advanced to the undying state and achieved immortality. All those prisoners were deeply shocked, unable to conceive how an undying state creature would be willing to abandon everything and fuse into someone else's body. Bang! Su Ping threw a punch with a force of hundreds of millions of tons imbued with Tao power. The Hayashan clan fellow tried to resist with its enormous arms, but they gave out and shattered. The fusion increased Su Ping's power and exceeded that of the Hayashan clan fellow. The former was quick to attack with a bloody sword he condensed. Each attack was many times more powerful than before. The guy from the Hayashan clan had to reconstruct his body again and again. He cried miserably. Su Ping sensed the Inferno dragon's universe and took a deep breath to draw power from it. Both the Black and Dread universe and the Chaos universe appeared behind his back, but the former was apparently much smaller, like the moon next to the Earth. Su Ping could feel how his Chaos universe was suppressing the others. It would have been impossible to harness that power if not for the fusion, and the dragon controlling its own Black and Dread universe. Break! Su Ping detonated the two universes at the same time. The violent powers gathered like twin stars, mutually illuminating the other, which then surged into Su Ping's body like storms. Once the terrifying power was swept, the guy from the Hayashan clan cried in panic, "Let me go. I know I was wrong. I'm willing to give all my power to you. Stop." "I will spare your soul," said Su Ping. Then he furiously slashed with his sword. The Hayashan fellow's enormous body, akin to that of an ancient god, was instantly cut in two. It exploded and fell apart, and then it was turned into countless pieces by a certain power. Su Ping instantly pulled those pieces toward him and quickly absorbed them. His merging power allowed him to absorb faster than before. The undying state soul of the Hayashan fellow was floating amongst the pieces. It looked at Su Ping in shock and fury, but didn't have the courage to make a move. Su Ping ignored the guy. He kept absorbing the great Tao and assimilating the flesh. Very soon the Tao of Origin thrived, and a universe took shape. 2 weeks later, a new undying universe was born. A superior aura emerged once the universe of Origin was condensed. The fire and illusion universes, which had been pushed aside, quickly gathered around it as if having found an ally. The three universes connected their powers under the pressure of the Chaos Universe. Chapter 15:11 Break the Dragon Prison 1. The suppressive effect of the Chaos Universe was instantly weakened by the linking of the other three universes. They basically had a 70-30 ratio, with the universe of original chaos being the predominant force. As expected of the power inherited from the sorcerer ancestors' bloodlines, it's easy to cultivate and it's more powerful than a lot of great Daos. Su Ping couldn't help but sigh. The universes condensed from other great Daos were nothing in comparison. It was fortunate that the joint effort of the three universes allowed him to draw some power from the fire universe through the opening created. Although seemingly unimportant, the fire universe had more than doubled his combat ability. The resulting energy from the collision of two universes was 3 times greater than the single universe of original chaos. After gauging the explosive power in his body, Su Ping believed he was strong enough to dominate the Archean divinity. He would be unmatched, even if all the ancestral gods from the 7 greatest clans took action. The Chaos Universe from one of the 12 sorcerer ancestors was already nothing the Archean divinity could compare to. He also had the Fire Universe, his Inferno Dragon, and he could establish a contract to harness the power from the godly world. It's a pity that I'm still too weak when compared to the heavens. I can't even break out from this dragon prison. He wasn't too happy about the situation. After taking part in the grand battle against the heavens, it became more than evident that ancestral gods weren't as strong as he thought. At most, they were only bigger ants in front of the heavens. Nobody was a real threat to the heavens until the sorcerer ancestor realm was achieved. Su Ping looked at the other prisoners. We'll give you our great Daos you want. The original dragon's ancestor will surely punish you if you kill us all. We can share the burden if the original dragons look for you in the future, said one of the prisoners in a hurry, voicing the others' thoughts. They feared that Su Ping would eat them all, just as he ate Yan Tai. They had already discovered that the primitive Chaos Clan fellow was extremely weird. He had significantly improved after swallowing their flesh and great Daos. They wouldn't miss that opportunity to advance if they were in his shoes. Su Ping snorted and said, "Hand over your great Daos." None of the prisoners dared to hesitate. They quickly released their great Daos, which flew towards Su Ping. The latter stayed his hand, noticing their willingness to cooperate, and simply absorbed the great Daos. He didn't resort to violence because he was merciful. He simply thought that the original dragons would surely fight the heavens later, and those prisoners would inevitably be sent to the battlefield. It would be a waste to kill them right away. He only needed to absorb their great Daos. Blood and essence weren't as necessary at the moment. His body had almost evolved completely after assimilating Yan Tai's flesh. Further beyond was the sorcerer ancestor level. However, countless undying state experts had remained stuck in that stage and couldn't make a breakthrough. If they could break the bottleneck, they would rise to the sky with a single step. The Hayashin fellow, now only a soul, felt wronged and regretful since he saw how the other prisoners were spared, but he had no courage to voice a complaint, fearing that Su Ping would swallow his soul. If that came to pass, he would be completely obliterated without any possibility to resurrect. Su Ping was already capable of killing undying state beings. He was a fearsome existence even in the eyes of his peers. Only some of the ancient existences in the 12 main clans had such a combat ability. They were the original mythical creatures, able to live as long as the sorcerer ancestors. Such existences were only second to sorcerer ancestors. Su Ping's absorption rate increased as the prisoners transmitted their great Daos. He asked the Inferno Dragon and his other pets to protect him, while he focused on condensing his 4th universe. Time flew. In the depths of the ancient and silent dragon prison, a group of figures were staying inside the black and red void. Those figures were all gargantuan and ferocious. At the center was a 10,000 feet tall young man. Without having buildings or other items as reference, the young man looked as petite as a normal person when compared to the enormous pets around him. The seventh. The seventh universe took shape. Su Ping slowly opened his eyes, and electricity flashed in both orbs. His body emitted an indescribably deep aura of chaos. The prisoners shivered in silence as they sensed that magnificent and horrifying aura. Su Ping had grown rapidly in a short amount of time after swallowing their great Taos. That improvement was beyond their imagination. Merely Su Ping's aura could pose a lethal threat to them. They even felt the same awe and fear, as if they were in the presence of a sorcerer ancestor. The soul of the Hayashin guy was hidden in the distance, shivering. He suddenly started to believe what Su Ping had said before. The man from the primitive Chaos clan probably had the capability to break the dragon prison on his own. "It's been a year and a half," mumbled Su Ping, sensing the flow of time in his universe. He then looked at the drained prisoners and knew he had reached the limit. There weren't enough resources and energy for him to condense an eighth universe inside the prison. If he wasn't able to break out of that prison with his current power, he could only choose to head back to the store and loot great Taos from other cultivation sites and return later. Chapter 15:12. Break the Dragon Prison 2. Are you ready? Su Ping looked at his pets, all set to give it a try. He knew his escape from the prison could alarm the original dragon's ancestor, who would then suppress him again. It would be no different from directly returning to the store. However, he still wanted to do it. Sensing their master's determination, both the dark dragon hound and the inferno dragon both moved next to him. They exchanged looks. Su Ping could feel what they were thinking. He then took a deep breath and released his contract power. All his pets were instantly assimilated as raw power in his body. Such a multiple fusion would be really difficult to other battle pet warriors, but it was already possible to merge with 5 pets in the celestial state. It was fairly easy to fuse with 10 pets at the same time while in the Tao heart state. As for ancestral gods, they had already seen through the great Tao. They could merge with as many pets as their bodies could tolerate. Su Ping's body changed significantly as he completely fused their power. He became much bigger, with scales and claws growing. A soft tentacle emerged from his brow and turned into the purple python's enormous head. One shoulder had the dark dragon hound's scary head, while the other had the inferno dragon. All the prisoners were truly shocked by the transformation. The bodily structure and its sense of power reminded them of the term perfection. It was a feeling only caused by the sorcerer ancestors. The 12 sorcerer ancestors looked different. However, no matter which of them they saw, they would feel that their bodies were natural and perfect. Such perfection was beyond the understanding of normal beings. It couldn't be seen, understood, or described. The power from the merging alone made Su Ping feel that he could easily kill Yan Tai without having to use up a couple of his lives. He then took a deep breath, and a rotating vortex appeared behind his back, which produced many illusory universes. They overlapped and gradually became real. The Chaos universe was no longer dominant when he condensed the 5th universe. Once the 6th universe came to be, the Chaos universe chose to join the rest. The 7th universe he had just condensed had been fused into the ring of universes. Everything was natural. The Chaos universe gave no signs of rejection. Adding the latter's might, Su Ping now had the power of 8 universes at his disposal. Considering the Inferno Dragon's undying universe, there were 9 universes in total. He stared at the void inside the dragon prison, then summoned both his essence and blood and quickly burned his vitality, all to transform it into a crimson sword. His own arms and legs were already the most powerful weapons in the world. The sword made of his essence and blood was the sharpest. Each drop of blood contained dozens of perfect great Taos. Bang! Su Ping suddenly detonated his chaos universe. A violent power spread out. The other 8 universes exploded one after the other. Such a tremendous blast pushed out the power of the entire universe. That was an attack that Tao Heart experts could only use once in their entire lives. However, it was the most common method used by undying state experts. Their universes could gather again and again, even if they were shattered 1,000 times. 9 streams of chaotic power gushed out simultaneously after the explosions. Su Ping glared and focused all his strength to contain them. It didn't take long for the power to surge and collide. He felt as if he were holding a quickly expanding hot balloon about to explode. Slash! With a roar, Su Ping infused the power into the bloody sword and slashed forth. Countless great dows lit up the entire dragon prison, just like the light from the explosion caused by a black hole. This sword was like the dawn, ended the momentary darkness. Boom! The dragon prison trembled, and a loud sound was heard. It was a first for Su Ping to receive a response after swinging his sword hundreds of times. He noticed an extremely small crack on the dragon prison. Su Ping had sliced the dragon prison open with a single attack. The Haitian guy widened his eyes and looked at the scene in fright. Billions of years had passed without him feeling this shocked. The other prisoners were also dumbfounded, unable to believe that such a miracle would truly happen. An undying state fellow cracked the sorcerer ancestor's universe. The sight of the resulting fissure inspired a delighted smile. Su Ping saw the result of his work. While unable to see her smile of delight, he burst into laughter. "Hurry up, the crack is about to heal," shouted one of the prisoners, seeing that the crack was narrowing. The Haitian fellow said, "Let's make a run for it or it'll be too late." They certainly had been exploited, and yet they almost cried tears of joy once they found a chance of escape. The cage that had imprisoned them for countless years had been cut open. Even if Su Ping was the one who did it, they were excited nonetheless. Su Ping, however, didn't do anything. He watched the crack heal with a smile on his face. If he could cut it open once, he could do it again. He did this not because he wanted to escape, but because he wanted to tell the original dragon's ancestor that he wasn't in the wrong. "It's healed." The prisoners were at a loss as they saw the crack heal, just like poked balloons. However, they snapped back to reality when they heard Su Ping's laughter, and their eyes were hopeful. If Su Ping was able to cut it once, there was a high chance he could cut it open again. "Why didn't you run?" asked the guy from the Haitian clan. Su Ping smiled casually and said, "I can leave any time I want." The prisoners were at a loss, but they were fully convinced. "You're the first person in history capable of breaking the sorcerer ancestor's universe," said one of the prisoners. "The original dragon's ancestor surely caught wind of the situation. You should go right now, or it'll surely confine you through other means," said another prisoner. He didn't say that because they cared about Su Ping, but because they feared the chance of being killed inside the prison like Su Ping. "He's already here." Su Ping raised his head with a smile. The space above the dragon prison became turbulent, slowly forming an eye. The orb was enormous, as dazzling as the sun, which lit up the entire prison. Su Ping and the others were already large enough, but they seemed to be as small as grains of dust when compared to the eye. "You actually thought of this method?" "Yes. This is indeed the only way for you people to get close to our level," said the ancestor with a snort. His voice was utterly oppressive, but Su Ping was in the undying state anyway. He didn't feel intimidated. Su Ping gazed at him and said, "I will surely surpass you if you give me your chaos qualification." The enormous eye narrowed, then said with a cold smile, "How arrogant! You could have taken this chance to escape. Do you still think you can get out of this place alive?" "I will get out of this place and I'll come back," said Su Ping with a stare. "Next time, I'll make you see that the original dragons can't represent all the dragons in the world. One day, my partner will surpass you and become the strongest dragon in all of history." Hilarious. The ancestor snorted. "You can indeed get closer to our level by using that cultivating method, but that's a mere approximation. There were people like you in the past, but they're all dead now." "It didn't work in the past, but that doesn't mean it won't work in the future. There's always hope in the future," declared Su Ping. "All dragons are under my command, including your so-called partner. On your knees." The original dragon ancestor turned cold. He then manifested an ancient and magnificent willpower, instantly descending over Su Ping. Su Ping, the other prisoners, and all his pets were all terrified. They were shivering. Such a scene was basically a confrontation against a sorcerer ancestor. Chapter 15:13, The Last Upgrade 1. The guy from the Hayashin clan and the rest of the prisoners shivered and collapsed on the ground. On your knees was the original dragon's ancestors thought, translated in a way Su Ping could understand. It meant to surrender in the most humble manner. The prisoners had different body structures and didn't understand what on your knees meant. However, they instinctively assumed the humblest postures they could think of. Some spread out like liquid, while others shrank their heads into their bodies, which were the most humiliating acts as they begged for mercy. Howl. The dark dragon hound, the vast sky thunderous dragon, and the other pets screamed and shivered as they fell as they tried to withstanding the pressure of a sorcerer ancestor, a being 2 realms higher in cultivation. The latter's willpower suppressed them like concrete hands. They had to surrender. Su Ping sent them back to the summoning space the moment they fell on their knees. Only he and the Inferno dragon were staring at the sorcerer ancestor. Although shaking, Su Ping didn't give in just like that, but he couldn't last for long. The ultimate dragon expert was more horrifying than he thought. He had met the Golden Crow ancestor and sorcerer ancestor Hun Yu before, but neither of them took him as an enemy. He only felt an indirect pressure from them. Now that he was facing the dragon expert, Su Ping knew that the latter could easily wipe him out with a mere thought. The gap between undying state experts and sorcerer ancestors was even bigger than that between an adult and a baby. They were like dragons against ants. The Inferno dragon gritted his teeth and tried to roar. However, an irresistible might was imposed onto it, making it hard for the beast to open its mouth. Its body also began to fall down beyond control. You can't control all the dragons in the world. Never. Su Ping gritted his teeth. His 8 universes exploded, turning into a storm that swept towards the sorcerer ancestor. The original dragon snorted. It was nothing more than some air being exhaled, but it was enough to snuff out the violent and scorching power. Both Su Ping and the Inferno dragon also vanished along with that power. The dragon ancestor narrowed its eyes as it looked at the slowly healing vortex. All its fury and coldness were gone. It became silent. The entire dragon prison became completely solid at that moment. All the creatures on the thousands of floors of the universe stopped moving as if frozen. Even their torturing was paused. Everything was soundless. Inside the store, Su Ping and the Inferno dragon stepped out of the vortex. The power of a supreme law suppressed them and reduced their bodies to normal as they got back inside the store. Su Ping and the Inferno dragon quickly adjusted their bodies, from planet-sized to a normal scale. The former also recovered his human appearance. Phew! Su Ping heaved a sigh of relief. Indeed, the system didn't lie to him. They were easily teleported back, right in the sorcerer ancestor's face. He felt amused by imagining the frustration on the dragon ancestor's face, but he was soon disappointed and regretful. All this time, he had been wandering the universe while looking for allies victimized by the heavens. The original dragons would undoubtedly be extremely powerful allies. It was a pity he couldn't ally with them anymore. Even under the threat of the heavens, they're still fighting against each other. How pathetic. Maybe it's not the heavens brutalizing all the other clans. They're actually brutalizing each other. Su Ping took a deep breath, feeling somewhat desperate. There was plenty of misery in the world, caused by one's own kind. Like civilians capable of persecuting officials, while also persecuting their neighbors who were also civilians. System, why do you think living creatures in the world must fight each other? We should fight against the heavens and nature. However, the experts who have managed to cultivate enormous strength often prefer to show off in front of weaklings and even suppress their own people with that same strength. Why is that? After a long time of silence, the system replied, "It's an instinct related to life." An instinct. Is it something that not even mythical creatures could get rid of? All living creatures have it, replied the system. Just take a flower, for example. It'll become bigger and stronger after absorbing enough sunlight. However, it will also conquer the territory of its own kind and claim even more energy at the same time. One flower blooms, and 100 blades of grass wither. Su Ping remained silent. Yes, even flowers and grass had that instinct. That was the raw, wild nature of all living creatures. System, do you think the heavens behave like this too? Asked Su Ping all of a sudden. Silence. The system was silent for a long time, as if not knowing how to answer. It finally said, if I say that they don't, would you think they're better? Su Ping frowned and pondered for a moment before he shook his head. No, they're my nemeses. They destroyed my home. No matter how unified and harmonious they are amongst themselves, it's pointless to me. The system only made a nasal sound in response. Su Ping didn't ask further. The stronger he was and the more things he saw, the more helpless he felt. Perhaps the loneliness of a real strong guy was partly caused by not having anyone to talk to, and partly because they were unwilling to talk to anyone. Su Ping pushed the door open and walked out. The noises in the store instantly made him feel he was back in the mortal world. It was a sense of familiarity. While his eyes wandered to look at Joanna, Green Lady, and Tang Ruyan, who was greeting customers at the door, he was reminded of his parents and his naughty sister. Chapter 15:14. The Last Upgrade 2. Those were the bonds he could never get rid of. The war between the sorcerer ancestors and the heavens has begun. I don't have much time left. Even if I can't change the world, I hope I have the power to at least keep myself safe. Su Ping gradually understood the Golden Crow's decision. They strove to keep themselves safe until they were strong enough to save the world. Boss. Boss Su. All the customers greeted him respectfully upon sight, with earnest faces and admiring eyes. They sincerely revered the last leader of humanity. All the human experts knew they would have died if not for him. Su Ping gave them a slight nod. He also nodded at Joanna and Green Lady before he stepped out of the store and rose to the sky right under the green glass. How is it going? Su Ping looked at Elaine. Elaine was slightly surprised by his appearance out of the blue, but she soon calmed down. She narrowed her eyes as she felt small differences in that human leader upon his return, especially a certain gravitas that even she found oppressive. She was truly astonished. Nothing's wrong. Everything has been going well, said Elaine. We're on the safest route. Nothing will happen. Don't be too confident too soon, said Su Ping. Elaine, tell me if anything is wrong. I'm going back to my secluded training. Su Ping didn't stay for too long. He simply turned around and left. She looked at the spot where he disappeared, deep in thought. For some reason, she found that human leader very terrifying. He had done his best to conceal his power, but she still had a sense of danger. However, she was an undying state expert. Could Su Ping be a threat to me? Once back in the store, Su Ping simply greeted everyone and then summoned the system. I've already met the requirements to upgrade the store, right? The upgrade will cost 1 billion energy points. Are you sure you want to upgrade? Replied the system rigidly. Su Ping secretly rolled his eyes. Of course. The store will be closed during the upgrade. Only the cultivation sites will be accessible, said the system. Its voice was somehow cold and sad. The voice made him feel that the system was a real living creature with emotions. I hope you can tell me how to resurrect the little skeleton after the upgrade, said Su Ping. It's actually very easy to resurrect the little skeleton. Don't worry, said the system. Su Ping's heart skipped a few beats. How? You'll know when the upgrade takes effect, said the system. The time needed for the upgrade is uncertain. It may take months or years. Just wait patiently. That long? Su Ping felt dazed. The usual was for the system to upgrade within 24 or 48 hours. It had only taken a week to upgrade the store to level 8. The system didn't reply. Instead, Su Ping only heard a gloomy sigh. There seemed to be an infinite jumble of feelings in that sigh. He was taken aback by it. Once the energy points were deducted, Su Ping soon noticed the changes in the store. He brought up the store panel, only to find that the menu was dim and the system store couldn't be opened. He selected the cultivation sites list. He found that the remains of High Heavens was dim, while the other cultivation sites were accessible. So I can't enter the remains of High Heavens during the system upgrade. Looks like the place is truly dangerous. Even the system has to be careful, thought Su Ping. Huh. Green Lady, Joanna and the others were looking at Su Ping. Being official employees who have signed a contract with the system, they received the notification that the store was closed. This would only happen when the store was being upgraded. Su Ping glanced at them and nodded in affirmation. He said to them, "The store is being upgraded. You can take a break. Tell me if you want to go to a cultivation site, or maybe you can just cultivate inside the store." Joanna said, "I want to take a look at the Archean divinity." "Okay." Green Lady said, "I'll just stay here, be safe." Su Ping nodded and asked them to settle the customer's orders. The latter had no choice but to leave reluctantly. They didn't complain, though, as they saw the upgrade as an excuse. Su Ping surely had something important to do. The things that were important to him were important to all of humanity. No one would dare to complain. They would simply wait. Su Ping asked Tang Ruyan to make an announcement, declaring that the store would be closed for months if not years, all to prevent customers from wasting time waiting. Once it was only Su Ping and his employees, he asked Joanna to pick a few pets that required professional training. Then he set off to the Archean divinity. The remains of High Heavens was closed for the moment. He couldn't go there even if he wanted to. However, he wouldn't go right now, even if the option was available. He had already found a way to improve. He just had to gather a lot of great Taos. Going to the remains of High Heavens would only slow down his cultivation. He would only be caught in a meaningless battle if he met the heavens again. Everything would be pointless until I become a sorcerer ancestor. Su Ping was going to condense all the great Taos he had perceived into universes. Although he didn't have a chaos qualification, he would also be capable of building thousands of universes with one thought and fight the sorcerer ancestors. Once everything was ready, Su Ping took Joanna to the Archean divinity. Chapter 15:15, The Last Upgrade 3. Su Ping returned to the ancient universe and looked at the vast world. He was no longer as shocked as when he first paid a visit. Only mixed feelings remained. I wonder if the chief elder has prepared for the thing I told him last time, thought Su Ping. He took Joanna to the continent where the Heaven Path Institute was located with a single thought. He looked at the neighboring continent, then remembered the ancestral god of the Bright Moon clan. Coldness glinted in his eyes. However, he didn't look for him right away. He went to the institute first. Yan Qing and the other elders sensed his arrival and rushed to greet him. He looked at them and said, "There's no need to make such a fuss. Ancestor Su, you are now an ancestral god and you deserve such a privilege," said the chief elder with a smile. Su Ping didn't linger on that topic. He said, "Chief elder, regarding the heavens, what's the opinion of the other clans?" The elder's smile disappeared. He said solemnly, "Ancestor Su, we've already informed all the clans. Ancestral God Wen Tian is aware of the matter too and confirmed it not long ago. However what?" Su Ping narrowed his eyes. "However, this is a big matter that will influence all clans. The 7 greatest clans have the final say. So far, they haven't planned to meet to consider the situation." The chief elder lowered his head. All the other elders were silent. In fact, the situation was even more humiliating than what the chief elder had let on. The Heaven Path Institute told all the clans about Su Ping's warning. However, none of them paid much attention to it. They thought it was a move for the Heaven Path Institute to rule over the world of gods, leveraging the help of the new ancestral god. In any case, the institute was a school, not a clan. It did have 3 more ancestral gods, but their academic position was sensitive, and was supervised by the 7 greatest clans. Even after issuing a warning about the impending threat of the heavens, not only did the clans dislike it, even the main 7 clans accused them of fretting and minding other people's business. They were told not to forget their identity. The Council of Gods, formed by the 7 greatest clans, was in charge of all the important matters. Their rejection had turned the warning into a joke. "There's no meeting." Su Ping's eyes turned cold. "They're only going to move until the heavens arrive. They thought I was bullshitting when I was an emperor. They still think the same now that I'm an ancestral god." Noticing Su Ping's fury, the chief elder quickly said, "Ancestor Su, don't be angry. The 7 greatest clans have controlled the world of gods for ages. This takes time. We've been sending elders to communicate with them. The situation will be much better when ancestral god Wen Tian comes out of seclusion. At least they'll be willing to listen to us. It is my belief that they'll understand." So they were even unwilling to listen in the past. Coldness flashed in Su Ping's eyes as an intense killing intent burst out. He remembered the original dragons, and his fury was reignited. How could they be so arrogant? Why are they so arrogant? The chief elder quickly said, "Ancestor Su, please don't be angry. You are indeed an honorable ancestral god, but there are too many ancestral gods in the 7 greatest clans. If any of them is provoked, the other 6 families will move to help. I believe they will listen to us when the first president wakes up." Su Ping knew that by first president, he was referring to the very first ancestral god of the Institute. After talking with ancestral god Wen Tian, Su Ping learned that the first 2 ancestral gods were away for their own reasons. One of them was asleep, while the other was caught in a dangerous land. That place was so dangerous that even ancestral god Wen Tian could get caught in it too if he tried to save the fellow. If that came to pass, the Heaven Path Institute would be in danger without an ancestral god to guard the fort. If they're unwilling to listen on their feet, they will listen on their knees. Su Ping suddenly turned around and said, "Lead the way." Chapter 15:16, Suppressing Ancestral Gods 1. All the elders were greatly shocked. The chief elder quickly said, "Ancestor Su, that won't do." "That's right. Forgive us for being blunt. Even though you're very strong, the 7 greatest clans have existed for countless years. Besides, if any of them is provoked, the other 6 families will readily take action. You'll be going against the 7 greatest clans at the same time," said another elder in a hurry. "Yes, Ancestor Su, please think carefully," said Yan Qing. Her face was solemn and anxious. "Please think carefully, Ancestor Su." All the elders bowed, trying to stop Su Ping. He understood what they were thinking. However, the 7 great clans were nothing in his eyes at the moment. Besides, that was the Archean divinity. He could bond with the power of the world and would be even stronger than in the dragon prison. "Don't worry, I'm not being reckless. I know what I'm doing." Su Ping waved a hand and made them stand. "Just lead the way." The elders didn't expect him to be so determined. Their expressions changed. The chief elder quickly begged, "Ancestor Su, please give us a little bit more time. We will surely make the great clans understand the severity of the matter." "It's not your fault. You don't have to be like this," said Su Ping while frowning. "I'll go find them if you're unwilling to lead the way." He took Joanna and flew away. All the elders were panicking. Su Ping was going to cause trouble. The chief elder hurriedly said, "Inform ancestral god Wen Tian right now. You'll go with me. We must stop Ancestor Su." Yan Qing turned around and returned to the Institute to alert ancestral god Wen Tian. As for the other elders, they went and followed the chief elder to chase after Su Ping in an attempt to persuade him and buy more time. Wen Tian could still stop him even if the human expert wasn't convinced. They soon caught up. They found to their relief that Su Ping had stopped in front of a continent, thinking that the latter had calmed down. "Ancestor Su." The elders quickly approached him. A domineering aura was manifested before the chief elder could say anything. It belonged to the 3-eyed young man clad in black, none other than the ancestral god of the Bright Moon clan. "Humph, what are you doing here? I said that you cannot establish a territory here. The Bright Moon clan will never have human neighbors, said the angry fellow. He couldn't do anything to Su Ping. It would be an ongoing annoyance if the latter kept causing trouble. You don't deserve to be our neighbors. Coldness flashed in Su Ping's eyes and he quickly took action. The universe of original chaos appeared, and he quickly expanded to tens of thousands of meters tall, like an ancient giant. He released the powerful aura of a mythical creature, as if able to pick stars from the sky and break through hell. You, the Bright Moon clan's ancestral god, changed his expression. Su Ping snorted coldly and threw a punch. His fist was like a meteorite, affecting a radius of 1,000,000 kilometers. The ground was rising and the rivers were changing routes. Just the fist's momentum had cleared the sky in a range of 100,000 kilometers. This is impossible, roared the black-clad god while feeling a strong sense of doom. Is this a human being? He's clearly a monster. He roared and released his universe. A dazzling light was shot from the third eye on his forehead in an attempt to resist. But the next moment, his universe exploded, and his original 1,000-feet-tall body was smashed into the deeper spaces by Su Ping, as if he were a rock. Su Ping closed his hand, pulling the Bright Moon's expert over and directly snatching him in one hand. I can kill you as easily as cutting grass. You don't deserve to be my enemy. Su Ping looked down at him as if he were a humble worm. The Bright Moon clan's ancestral god was horrified. Blood was flowing out of his 3 eyes. He looked at Su Ping in fear, not once imagining the gap between them would be as massive. He was even more scared than when he confronted the old monsters of the 7 greatest clans. Chaos monster, you truly are a chaos monster. Ever since their previous clash, he had investigated all he could about the new ancestral god, who was said to be the descendant of the chaos perception dragon and a god. Su Ping's body was enough to confirm the theory. He was nervous and frightened, as if in the clutches of a veritable ferocious beast. It was worth mentioning that the chaos perception dragon was known for eating ancestral gods alive. From today on, the Bright Moon clan won't be a high-ranked clan anymore. Su Ping looked at him coldly. He clenched his fist hard and squeezed the guy. The guy's reconstituting universe was being suppressed by the chaos universe. His body exploded, and the floating great Daos were soon absorbed by Su Ping. The 9th universe was about to take shape. Su Ping kept the soul of the Bright Moon clan's ancestral god. Since he no longer had the undying great Dao, he would need a new body to reincarnate, and his cultivation would surely plummet. I'll give you a new body. Be a guard for humanity in the 1,000,000 years to come. Su Ping pointed a finger and created a body with a drop of blood and inserted the Bright Moon clan's expert. He then left a brand, turning the fellow into a guard to protect the human clan. That was the punishment for his offense. You're so brutal. Now in a new body, the Bright Moon's expert fell to the celestial state. His Dao heart was broken. He would have to cultivate all over again, and it would take forever to become an ancestral god again. Chapter 15:17, Suppressing Ancestral Gods 2. The black-clad god could only break free from Su Ping's shackles until he became an ancestral god. You have your pride and I have mine. Don't act so tough if you're incapable of defending your pride in front of me. Su Ping spoke as if saying a tongue twister. The former ancestral god of the Bright Moon clan was so angry his face turned purple. He had lost all hope. He wasn't even afraid of death, but he couldn't kill himself. The body provided by Su Ping was at the top of the Dao heart state. First, he would have to cultivate a Dao heart and become a peak god emperor to have the option to end his own life. Wait here until the humans come over and establish in this territory. Su Ping ignored him, simply throwing the fellow to the continent. It was also impossible for the latter to escape, since his power was being restrained. After that, Su Ping led Joanna onward. Everything was settled in but a few seconds. Not only was she dumbfounded by it, the elders of the Heaven Path Institute were just as shocked. It wasn't until Su Ping left that they finally looked down at the former ancestral god on the ground. Everything was real. That ancestral god was stripped of his cultivation and enslaved by Su Ping. A ancestor Su. Was he serious? The elders looked at each other in bewilderment. Everything was awfully surreal. An expert they could only look up to was absolutely vulnerable in front of Su Ping. He was obviously as strong as the old monsters in the 7 great clans. No wonder he dares to go against them on his own. He already had the top strength in the world of gods. Even if he couldn't win, he could at least leave in one piece. So Ancestor Su is truly confident. Looks like we overreacted just now. But how long has Ancestor Su been an ancestral god? How is it possible? Don't forget that Ancestor Su hasn't spent much time cultivating in his entire life. The elders suddenly remembered that Su Ping's vitality aura was only 1,000 years old. All of them gasped. They soon recovered and quickly caught up with him. While on the way, Joanna looked at the constantly changing landscape by Su Ping's side. She could no longer tell how fast they were going. She turned around and asked Su Ping, "The one just now was an ancestral god, right?" "That's right." She was at a loss, noticing how he had answered so casually. Every god knew how important ancestral gods were. They represented a fear etched in the deepest part of their being. Su Ping had already grown to a point that she couldn't even look up to. "We're here," said Su Ping. The fast-changing landscape stopped, and everything became clear. The two of them stood in the clouds. Before them was a lofty mountain rising to the clouds, and around it were many other high mountains where temples had been built. That was the Phasian clan's territory, one of the 7 greatest clans. "Who are you? How dare you break into our territory?" 2 figures dashed over upon sensing Su Ping's undisguised aura. They soon showed appalled faces when they saw him. Su Ping had revealed his mythical body when he took care of the Bright Moon clan's ancestral god. The trip didn't take long, so he continued using the body as it was. Now that he was there, he stood in the Phasian clan's territory like one of the mountains. Ancestral god. The 2 god emperors toned down on their fury, but they weren't as flustered as other god emperors would in a similar encounter. After all, it was the Phasian clan. There was nothing in the Archean divinity that could threaten the 7 great clans, not even the ancestral gods of other clans. "Which clan are you from? What's the purpose of your visit?" asked one of the god emperors. "Who do you think you are? Are you even worthy to talk to me? Have your ancestral god come out?" Su Ping roared. The sound of his voice caused the mountains within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers to shake. Rocks were falling, and ripples appeared on the barrier, which was almost about to explode. He could have blown up the mountains with a rote, if it wasn't for his unwillingness to hurt the innocent. The god emperor's armor exploded and was turned to pieces by the great Tao, instantly becoming garbage. They were sent flying thousands of meters away, feeling that they could die at any moment. Both of them were shocked, not expecting that ancestral god to dare trouble one of the 7 great clans. However, neither of them dared to be angry because of the outburst. They were intimidated by Su Ping, and also feared that he would kill them on a whim if provoked. They would end up dying even if their clan suppressed him eventually. "Who's being insolent here?" said a magnificent and cold voice before the 2 god emperors could reply. Then, the rays of light in the entire world turned green, and a figure stepped out of the void and stood in front of the 2 emperors. Ancestor Han. The 2 emperors hurriedly paid their respects upon seeing their ancestor. "It is Su Ping, a human being." Su Ping gave the ancestral god a cold and aggressive look. "I heard that the elders of the Heaven Path Institute came to discuss with you about the heavens, and you didn't take them seriously. Wasn't it so?" "A human being." The green-robed ancestral god frowned. He realized Su Ping's identity and coldly replied, "We were duly informed of the matter you mentioned. We have our own plans. Are you dissatisfied with that?" "What exactly are your plans?" Su Ping stared at him. The chief elder and the other people of the institute had just arrived. They were nervous to see how Su Ping was confronting the Phasian clan's ancestor. After all, The guy was much stronger than the Bright Moon clan's expert. Chapter 15:18, Suppressing Ancestral Gods 3. You've just become an ancestral god and you're already acting this arrogant. Did Wen Tian not teach you the rules? Ancestor Han's face turned cold. Let me ask you again, what are your plans? Su Ping stared at him. Ancestor Han's face turned gloomy. This matter involves all clans. You don't get to decide. Don't forget your identity. Do you think the Heaven Path Institute can decide everything for the gods because you have 4 ancestor gods now? There was a swooshing sound, and a figure appeared out of nowhere. Ancestral god Wen Tian had just arrived, an elder Yan Qing who went to inform him. Ancestor Han, sorry. Ancestor Su just became an ancestral god and is a little bit reckless. He only lost his composure because he was concerned about the safety of all gods. I hope you can forgive him, said Wen Tian in a hurry. Ancestor Han was even colder upon seeing the latter arrive. You'd better teach him well, since he's related to the Heaven Path Institute. I can forget what happened today if he apologizes, and the Institute gives away 10 spots for the mysterious realm. Don't let this happen again. Wen Tian slightly changed his expression. However, he curbed his anger and managed to give the other a smile. Ancestor Su was indeed a bit reckless, but he did so considering the welfare of all gods. The heavens are indeed a problem. You should really think about it. How dare you, Ancestor Han bellowed. Since when is the Heaven Path Institute qualified to decide on big matters? Do you honestly think you're above all other clans because you have 4 ancestral gods? All of us know how your other 2 ancestors are faring at the moment. Even if they break free, you have to bow before the Facian clan. What gave you the gall to boss around? Ancestral god Wen Tian's face was gloomy, but he knew it was true. Besides, if the Facian clan was provoked, the other 6 clans wouldn't just stand idle. They surely could compete amongst themselves for resources, but they always stood together when another force provoked them. They would never allow an 8th force to appear and compete with them over the cake. Ancestor Su, let's go. Wen Tian didn't want to say another word. It was obvious that those people didn't care for them. Staying there would only be insulting. Apologize and compensate. Do you think you can leave just like this? Ancestor Han's face was cold. He had given them a bit of face since they represented the Heaven Path Institute. Besides, Su Ping was an ancestral god. Under different conditions, he would have made sure that the offending clan would pay the price. Su Ping gradually looked away after staring at Ancestor Han. They looked at the sky in the distance. After that, he heaved a sigh. The Heaven Path Institute will surely. Ancestral god Wen Tian was going to reply to Ancestor Han when Su Ping interrupted him. Time for this to come to an end. His words stunned all the onlookers. Once again he looked at Ancestor Han. I'm already terrified of faces like yours. Very tired, so this should be over. What are you talking about? Ancestor Han frowned. Su Ping smiled and then said to ancestral god Wen Tian, Brother Wen Tian, watch over the elders. I don't want to hurt them by accident. Wen Tian narrowed his eyes. You. There was a loud bang. Su Ping stepped forward, causing an earthquake affecting a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers. He waved his arm, gathering the chaos universe in his hand. The manifestation grew as massive as a meteorite and imposed a terrifying pressure on everyone. Bang! Su Ping waved his hand, and the chaos universe pressed down. Ancestor Han changed his expression, now showing shock and anger. How dare you? He never thought that the new ancestral god would be that crazy. There had been other ancestral gods over the years who dared to attack the 7 great clans, but all of them were killed. That was why nobody else had tried to intrude. However, after countless years, another reckless fellow had shown up. Chapter 15:19, Fighting Alone in the Archean Divinity 1. Stop! It was a furious roar that came from a distance. However, the universe of original chaos still pressed down ruthlessly. A dazzling light exploded, causing the entire continent to tremble. That whole continent belonged to the Facian clan. unlike other continents shared by several high-ranked clans. A brilliant green light covered a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers as the continent shook. It countered the blast, but it dimmed quickly after. Su Ping took action even before the earthquake ended. He struck with his mountainous fist, raising a raging wind that caused the ground to lift, creating deep ravines. There was a loud bang. Su Ping's fist appeared to have hit something. A dark figure flew out, crushing hundreds of mountains and suddenly disappearing into the deeper spaces. However, two figures simultaneously charged at Su Ping from the void immediately after. One of them was Ancestor Han, who had just been sent flying. He wielded a divine spear and wore a dark helmet. He changed to a godly 1,000 feet height, but that was only as large as one of Su Ping's arms. The other figure was wearing blood-colored armor and held a sword. He looked at Su Ping coldly. "Human ancestral god, do you want humanity to be eliminated from this world?" "Eliminated? Do you really think you're capable of doing that?" Brutality flashed in Su Ping's eyes. "You pieces of trash dare to stop me. Make all your ancestral gods come out. I'll deal with them once and for all." "How arrogant! We will surely capture and suppress you. All human beings will become slaves for eternity." Both of the Phaeacian ancestral gods were furious. Never had they been treated with such scorn, in all of the time since the Phaeacian clan became one of the 7 greatest clans. "Noisy!" Su Ping roared and punched again. His just detonated chaos universe was gathered again, but this time it turned from a gargantuan sun into a tiny ball in his hand. Like this, however, it emitted a terrifying destructive aura that caused the 2 expert gods to change expressions. "Hurry up and activate the Phaeacian divine array." One of the latter hurriedly ordered the god emperors watching the battle in the distance. It was impossible for them to partake in such a battle. They would only be taken as cannon fodder. Noticing Su Ping's rising momentum, those god emperors hurriedly activated the array. It was the top protective measure made by the joint effort of all the clan's ancestral gods, and could resist an ancestral god's attack. Both of the ultimate gods felt reassured once the array was activated. They roared and charged at Su Ping. Both detonated their respective universes, and flames covered their bodies. The chaos universe in Su Ping's hand, however, suddenly exploded. The blast didn't spread out. Instead, it quickly fused into his arm. While looking at the pair rushing over, he suddenly stepped forward and waved a hand, and directly grabbed Ancestor Han, who was flying over. This strike would surely hit its target. All causalities had been cut off. As long as he existed in Su Ping's memory, he could land a strike no matter how far apart they were from each other. "Break!" Ancestor Han roared and made a sweeping motion with his spear, gathering the power of destruction. Such a spear could have caused a hole on the continent. He then aimed to stab the human expert furiously. It was completely useless. Su Ping's giant hand was like the mystic iron from chaos. The spear poked and poked, but no wounds were made. On the other hand, when Su Ping clenched his fist, Ancestor Han's body exploded with a scream. Blood was squeezed out and bones cracked, the spear breaking in the process. A sharp and pointed coldness attacked Su Ping's back. It was a sword aura that instantly slashed down. He turned around and punched without looking back. The sword aura was shattered, and the ancestral god wielding the sword was sent flying like a worm. The ground shattered on his path and the clouds were cleared. "Roar!" Su Ping bellowed at the skis and raised his arm to throw away the body in his hand. Ancestor Han's remained smashed heavily into the Phaeacian clan's array, causing it to shake and hum. The great Tao of chaos he released had prevented Ancestor Han's universe from regenerating. At the moment, he was like a pile of mud with a smidge of vitality left. He could die at any moment. Su Ping ignored the dying fellow. He suddenly stepped on the Phaeacian clan's array on the mountains, and the protection shook violently, the ground collapsing as well. All the gods inside the array shivered as they looked up at the huge monster. They thought it was the darkest moment of the Phaeacian clan. "Our ancestral god lost." "Who's that, senior? Why is he so terrifying? All of the clansmen were frightened, as it was the first time ever experiencing such a thing. All the emotions sealed up in their blood crawled up at that moment. Terror. Ancestor Su He. Further away, ancestral god, when Tian and the elders he was protecting looked at the scene in shock. Su Ping was truly like an invincible monster from chaos at the moment. His gigantic body tore everything apart. He single-handedly suppressed the Facian clan and seemed to be unstoppable. Ancestral god when Tian was shocked. Being in the same cultivation realm, he knew better than anybody else how terrifying Su Ping was. Chapter 15:20. Fighting alone in the Archean Divinity 2. When Tian had told Su Ping about the rules of the world and the reason why the 7 great clans couldn't be provoked. However, Su Ping had definitely proven that he was no weaker than those old monsters. He's capable of slaying ancestral gods. He's on par with the ferocious beasts. Ancestral god, when Tian secretly gasped in his heart. Not just him. The 2 Facian ancestral gods who had been sent flying realized how terrifying the man was. They were angry and shocked. When was such an existence born in an outlier clan? No wonder Su Ping dared to challenge the Facian clan on his own. "Stop," said a soft voice. 3 figures rushed out and stood in Su Ping's way, as he was about to completely shatter the Facian divine array. The person in the middle had green long hair and an alluring body figure. It was a breathtakingly beautiful woman. Flanking her was an old man and middle-aged looking fellow. Both seemed to be as strong as Ancestor Han. Su Ping fixed his gaze on the green-haired woman in the middle and said with a cold tone, "Are you the ones whom the Facian clan relies on?" He could feel that the woman had the deepest aura, which was definitely above the normal ancestral gods. "Stop, this battle is pointless. The Facian clan has no grudges against humanity. Why bother?" said the green-haired woman coldly and calmly. Su Ping looked down at her and said, "It was unnecessary in the past, but it's very necessary right now." The green-haired woman said, "Don't think there's nothing we can do about you. Then why don't you give it a try?" Su Ping didn't talk any longer and simply stomped ruthlessly. His enormous feet were like mountains crushing down with infinite momentum. They contained the power from the chaos universe's explosion. The pressure produced had lowered the ground by dozens of meters. "You've made the wrong decision." The green-haired woman turned cold. Her body radiated a brilliant green light, which began to spread like countless butterflies and grew to reveal her original form. She was 100,000 feet tall and resembled an ancient tree. There was a crown above her head. She wore the crown like a queen. Many tentacle-like vines swung on her arms and the rest of her body. Her feet were deeply rooted in the continent, not just into the soil, but also dug into the deep spaces of that world. Su Ping stepped down ruthlessly, and countless vines darted from her arms to form a net that looked like a funnel to stop Su Ping's feet. Endless vines also shot out from her crown. Those were strong and tough, and moved to tie Su Ping up. However, her expression changed soon after. The vines blocking Su Ping's feet were unable to counter his force. Instead, they were actually stretched, hitting the Facian divine array along with his feet. Boom, the divine array shook and was a lot dimmer than before. If not for her intervention, Su Ping could have shattered the array. He noticed the abundant aura of chaos emanated by the woman and her appearance. He remembered having seen people like her in sorcerer ancestor Hun use battle. A mythical creature bloodline. Unfortunately, it's not one of the 12 sorcerer ancestors' bloodlines. Back then, the survivors of that clan had followed him to meet the original dragons. "Your bloodline is not pure enough. Even if your ancestors came here, they would still have to kneel before me." Su Ping's eyes were absolutely cold and domineering. He raised his leg again, this time aiming at the woman. "You!" She was truly shocked. At first she thought that activating her bloodline and showing her most powerful form would be enough to stop him, but Su Ping was much stronger. This made her realize why Ancestor Han was nearly beaten to death by Su Ping with a single attack. Such an outcome was actually him going easy on the fellow. Of course, she knew that the human would no longer show mercy. Countless vines rustled and formed several nets the moment Su Ping threw a kick, all to slow him down. The nets covered his feet and removed all momentum. Each vine could handle a force of 1,000,000,000 tons. However, physical force wasn't really meaningful to beings of that level. The vines were actually removing the Tao power on Su Ping's feet. All of this happened in instants, but there were countless movements during their clash. The vines twisted and pulled. If Su Ping weren't strong enough, he would have been trapped and bound by the vines. But there was a boom, and the vines covering the front exploded. The blast power swept out, already breaking the giant tree the woman had transformed into. She would have been in a half-dead status if not for her being rooted in the world of gods and absorbed its power to heal herself. Ancestor Fei, the other two ancestral gods, cried in shock. Our strongest ancestral god can't defeat this human. Normal ancestral gods would only end up as nutrition when facing Ancestor Fei, after being tied up and drained. Whoosh whoosh. Chapter 15:21, Fighting Alone in the Archean Divinity 3. The two ancestral gods rushed to attack. Cold electricity darted out of Su Ping's eyes. He steadily landed on the ground, and his chaos universe exploded again the moment those two experts arrived. A torrent of power surged out, then he waved his arms, bashing the two ancestors with his enormous hands. They were both punched deep into the ground. The full-strength strikes of those two gods couldn't compare to Su Ping's punches. Back in the dragon prison, Su Ping had swallowed Yan Tai's flesh and polished his body to become the best an ancestral god could attain. He could suppress most of his peers with physical strength alone. Dai. Blood and essence was gathered on Su Ping's arm. Divine light was manifested, and he suddenly slashed at Ancestor Fei. But exactly at that moment, 3 streams of light darted over and collided with the sword. The sword aura was instantly spread, and the 3 streams were forced to reveal themselves. They were 3 ancestral gods. The trio came to a halt in shock. It was really difficult for them to resist Su Ping's attack even while joining forces. Ancestor Fei, don't worry, we're already here. He should have known better than to dare provoke the 7 greatest clans. The human ancestral god, you will be the cause of humanity's doom. Humans will be forever our slaves. Many figures stepped out from the void, emitting terrifying ancestral god auras. Those ancestral gods were all from the other 6 great clans. One after another, a dozen of them arrived. Their powerful auras filled the world. Even the wind seemed to have stopped blowing. Ancestral god Wen Tian and the elders of the Heaven Path Institute showed different. It was true, the 7 great clans always teamed up against a common foe. The gods of the Facian clan were all shocked and excited to see that unprecedented scene. Many of them had never seen an ancestral god their entire lives. After all, those experts would always live in seclusion. Only their names and stories were mentioned. However, they now had the privilege of seeing many ancestral gods at the same time. Such a moment would be recorded in the history of the godly world. That human is done for. He dared to challenge the 7 great clans. He doesn't know what he's doing. My grandpa wasn't lying. The 7 greatest clans rule this world. Who would dare to disobey? He will be imprisoned and enslaved by the Facian clan because of his arrogance. The Facian gods were so thrilled that they were almost shivering. The other 6 clans had made an appearance to support them. Although competitors most of the time, they were willing to step up to defend against a common enemy. This was why the 7 greatest clans never lost. Human ancestor, I can see that you're a rare genius. Surrender right now and serve each of the 7 clans for 100,000 years, and I will spare you, said an ancestor of the Chechen clan stepped out. He looked like a tall young man, but his eyes were deep and dark, showing condescension and indifference. Both his hair and eyebrows were golden. Serving us, that's not bad. Another ancestral god nodded, thinking it was a great alternative. It was even more overbearing than directly killing Su Ping. After all, people would probably forget the battle in 100,000 years. But if Su Ping served them, all clans would remember the authority of the 7 greatest clans in the next 700,000 years. I gave you an opportunity. Regret is useless right now. Ancestor Fei had recovered by then. She coldly stared at Su Ping, who was at the moment surrounded by the ancestral gods. She had noticed his extraordinary combat ability and knew she would barely be capable of killing him, so she opted to ask Su Ping to back off. However, he was too stubborn to listen. Regret. Su Ping stood firmly on the ground and was a veritable monster tens of thousands of feet tall. He flashed an aggressive stare as he looked down at the ancestral gods around him, then said in a cold tone, "Is this all of the power of the 7 greatest clans?" Chapter 1522, Suppressing an Era, 1. Humph, is it not enough? It's more than enough to kill you. It seems that you've chosen to die. All the ancestral gods surrounding Su Ping sensed the provocation in his words. Some sneered, others looked gloomy, while a few remained nonchalant, like mighty deities looking down at the ants on the ground. Die. The previously pummeled pair of ancestral gods from the Phaeacian clan rushed over. They showed no hesitation after being bolstered by the allied clans, ready to kill the human expert. While the pair of ancestors took action, the ancestors of the other 6 clans released their universes. The suffocating aura nearly collapsed that time and space. "Guys, please move the battlefield out of this world," said Ancestor Fei in a hurry. She was unwilling to kill Su Ping right there. Considering the latter's strength, if he attacked desperately during his death throes, he would surely destroy the continent. As things were, a dozen ancestral gods were involved in the fight. It wouldn't be surprising if half the continent sank. All right. The other gods understood Ancestor Fei's request. The Phaeacian clan would suffer a huge loss even if Su Ping was killed. Boom! An ancestral god took action and tore an opening in the void, ready to kill Su Ping in the domain beyond. Su Ping couldn't help but laugh when he saw what they were doing. "Finishing you off is not that troublesome. Come here and die." He suddenly waved his arms and detonated his chaos universe. A violent power was gathered in his hands, like hundreds of black holes. He pulled 2 ancestral gods nearby and simply squeezed them. "How audacious!" roared a top ancestral god, unleashing his universe to cut Su Ping's great Tao of chaos to pieces and to block the Tao power, stopping the 2 ancestral gods from resurrecting. Soon after, the 2 ancestors resurrected on the other side. The revived pair changed their cold smiles to faces of fury. It only took a move for Su Ping to destroy their bodies and almost make it impossible for them to resurrect. They had almost been killed. It was terrifying. He was one of the strongest, even when considering the experts in the 7 greatest clans. No wonder he dares to be so arrogant. He carries the bloodline of a ferocious beast, and he's even stronger than the beast itself. There's also godly blood in his body, and he's awakened powers of mythical creatures. "Everybody, don't be careless. Kill him right now," said an ancestral god of the Kinglian clan. He was always cautious, so he was quick to notice Su Ping's extraordinary traits. The other ancestors followed the Kinglian clan expert's cue and took action, charging at Su Ping at the same time. "He dares to challenge the 7 greatest clans. We must suppress him as soon as possible. This way we will make everyone know that our authority cannot be put to question. Suppress him with all your might. Kill him, show him the fury of the gods." All the ancestors of the great clans attacked almost simultaneously. The power from a dozen exploding universes bombarded Su Ping in a crazy manner. The entire world was shaking. Ancestor Fei looked awful, but she knew it would be hard for them to relocate in a short period of time if Su Ping was unwilling to leave. She could only ask her companions to reverse time and rebuild the continent after the battle was over. As for her clansmen, she could recreate them with one thought if they met an unfortunate end. The lives below the Tao heart state were simply energy for her. She could easily recreate them at the cost of some energy. That was the power of an ancestral god. They could create everything. That was the reason why they were the foundation of a clan. As long as ancestral gods stood, it would be possible to recreate the entire clan, even if it was completely eliminated. If the celestial experts had creator-like abilities after condensing a universe, ancestral gods were thousands of times better. They could create and destroy everything in an instant. Boom! Boom! The cluster of sword and spear auras launched by the gods were like a sun about to drown and shatter Su Ping's existence. No one bothered about the possible collateral damage. After all, everything could be rebuilt. As long as Su Ping was killed, it wouldn't matter even if the continent was destroyed. They could build another one. The world was collapsing and the stars were changing. The gods in the Phaeacian divine array saw doom approaching. The scene would be forever etched in their souls. They would never forget. The scenes they witnessed were beyond the limits of their imagination. The great Taos collapsed, while space and time were in disarray. Many shadows crept out of the void. The sky and the ground seemed to have been swapped. Flames and meteors were falling. The ancestral gods' attacks nearly suffocated them. They were frightened, suddenly realizing that the Phaeacian clan could survive with the help of the other 6 great clans, but they would probably die. Bang! It was the sound of a massive explosion amongst all the destructive attacks. Then, everybody saw a brilliant, gargantuan fist emerging from the explosive energy. It was as if a fiend had awakened in the mist and raised an arm. The arm, which was more than 10,000 feet long, swung away, splitting up the sky and the ground. The storm was obliterated and the incoming attacks were bounced back. With a boom, the gargantuan fist punched an ancestral god brutally, sending him deep into the continent. The entire tectonic plaque was shaking. There were cracks within a radius of 1,000,000 kilometers. All the beasts in the area fell on their knees in panic. The overwhelming pressure made it impossible for them to even escape. They were like barbarians begging for the mercy of the Lord. Chapter 15:23, Suppressing an Era, 2. Charge! An ancestral god roared. The ancestor who had been punched away was a clansman of his. The fellow had been defeated with a single punch. "Ancestor Fei, restrain him," shouted an ancestor from another clan. Ancestral gods had ample battle experience, and they could tell that Su Ping wasn't easy to deal with. Furthermore, no one would be his match if they were to duel. All contempt was shed, as they planned to cooperate in killing Su Ping. Cooperation and attacking together were different. Their high-level cultivation would produce flawless teamwork. "I'll try, but I can stop him for only 1 second at most," said Ancestor Fei in a hurry. She felt shocked and anxious upon seeing the human kicking and punching, sending ancestral gods flying. This human ancestor is brutal. Even if the Chaos Perception Dragon were there, it would have been beaten to death under their joint attack. 1 second. Ancestor Fei's answer gave the other ancestral gods a chill. Her forte was restraining. Even they found it tricky to deal with her. Even so, she could only restrain Su Ping for 1 second. Of course, 1 second was like 10 minutes for them, and they could do many things, but it was still too short. "Guys, we must kill him with 1 strike," said an ancestor in a low voice. The other ancestors were alarmed, yet they secretly prepared themselves. Ancestor Fei soon found an opportunity. Su Ping wasn't paying special attention to her, maybe because he didn't think she was important. Such an attitude towards her gave her a mixture of delight and anger. Her, an ancestral god, had she never been disregarded like that? Her opponent would pay a price for slighting her. Vines darted out of her body and stretched into the void to bind the human expert. The vines emitted the green light of life. She burned her universe as she tried to strangle Su Ping. It wasn't just ensnaring him. Even the great Tao inside his body was sealed. At the moment, he was like a piece of wood that could only be struck. "Hurry!" The other ancestral gods saw the opportunity and attacked Su Ping with their ultimate skills. "Human ancestor, I will show you the god's real power," roared one of the old ancestral gods. He turned into a sun and moved to crash into Su Ping's chest with a destructive aura, all ready to go through Su Ping's body. Huh? Su Ping saw the vines binding him and the ancestral gods as they attacked in a frenzy, quickly realizing the strategy as he also noticed the cold smile on Ancestor Fei's face. He couldn't help but smile back in kind. "I've seen it. You're just trash that's not even a millionth as good as me," Su Ping roared, causing the world to tremble. He was almost like a peerless dictator. A terrifying power burst from his limbs, instantly blowing up all the vines. The chaos universe behind him also exploded. Two more universes appeared after that, but they exploded before anyone could see them clearly. The three universes exploded, and all their power was suffused into Su Ping's body. A terrifying aura was spread out in the world. He then roared and punched. Bang! The sun-like ancestral god met Su Ping's fist and instantly exploded. The terrifying explosion echoed throughout the place. It was as if 10,000 stars would have shattered at the point of impact. The light was so dazzling, and the blast was so powerful that even the trees 1,000,000 kilometers away were bent out of shape. The unfortunate ancestor's flesh exploded. Su Ping's fist momentum shattered the surrounding space. It even moved beyond the continent, causing a deep ravine in the vast ocean and reaching the neighboring continent. It didn't stop until a dent 100,000 kilometers long was made. The power of his fist left all the gods in shock. Ancestral god Wen Tian, who was watching the battle and protecting the elders, was looking at the blast with wide eyes. His jaw almost hit the ground. What kind of power is that? It is absolutely destructive. That attack could have punched through the world of gods 10 times over. Is this why the 7 greatest clans are so proud? Su Ping didn't bother to look. He suddenly leaped and threw a kick, directly blowing up 2 ancestral gods to pieces. Their universes fell apart and they tried to resurrect, but Su Ping stopped them with an absolutely dominating power. However, he didn't follow through and killed them. He simply confined their souls. Then Su Ping strode towards Ancestor Fei. This is the special move of the 7 greatest clans. While she fearfully saw him approach, he waved a fist and broke her body, then stomped on her remains. "Who's next?" His roar echoed in the world. The entire world could hear his furious declaration. The ancestral gods of the other 6 great clans shivered, especially the one whose top ancestral god had been pulverized with a punch and had yet to recover. The latter's undying universe was being suppressed and couldn't regenerate. It was very likely that he would perish if he wasn't rescued in time. However, no one dared to step up. All the ancestors were swept by an unprecedented fright as they looked at Su Ping's furious and monstrous face. The human ancestor was too terrifying. He wasn't like any of the ancestral gods they knew. He was even more terrifying than a ferocious beast. Chapter 1524, Suppressing an Era 3. Why have you stopped? Su Ping looked around at the strongest ancestral gods. The latter changed their expressions. They could assess that he had yet to use his full power as they looked at the fallen ancestor Fei under his feet. That was the reason they were scared to make another move. "What exactly do you want?" asked one of the ancestral gods. "On your knees," Su Ping bellowed. The ancestral god changed his expression and looked at Su Ping with shock and fury. "I gave you a chance to talk on your feet, but you didn't cherish it. The 7 greatest clans will be no more if you make the wrong decision," said Su Ping. "Don't go overboard," said one of the ancestors, clearly incensed. "Does he want to rule over all gods?" "Phew!" Su Ping suddenly punched him. The punch was just as powerful as the previous one. The angry ancestor was then shocked. He hurriedly resisted by exploding his universe, and the expert gods nearby helped him. They knew they couldn't afford any more casualties, or it would be even more impossible to resist the humans' actions. The ancestral gods condensed the power of 10 universes and turned it into a huge storm that blocked Su Ping's attack. The targeted ancestor felt a slight relief, seeing that the human's punch was blocked. He immediately said, "Let's just talk nicely." However, he was interrupted by Su Ping. "You're not worthy enough." Boom! An explosion burst out as a fourth universe appeared behind Su Ping's back. The fourth universe exploded, and the terrifying power was injected into Su Ping. His fist broke free from the storm and punched brutally again. Even the colors of the world seemed to be changing. All the ancestral gods were appalled. They noticed Su Ping's strange multiple universes earlier, but they never saw them clearly. Is that the source of Su Ping's terrifying strength? A resounding bang. The ancestral gods gathered their strength again, but Su Ping's punch was greater and fiercer than before. The storm they raised was torn apart. The god who was the primary target was instantly blown up. The dozen ancestral gods nearby were also sent flying. In the distance, one of the ancestors yet to take action looked awful. He already knew it would be almost impossible to stop the human. You're being excessive. Besides, even if they stopped him, so what? Could they kill Su Ping? Apparently not. Su Ping would be an undefeatable existence if they didn't unite. No solution would be found if he chose to look for trouble with any clan in the future. The balance in the world of gods would surely change. He only hoped to negotiate in a relatively peaceful way. Excessive. Su Ping glanced at him with eyes as massive as suns. More dazzling universes appeared behind him. The fifth, the sixth, the seventh. Each universe carried a glaring and scorching power, along with infinite Tao power momentum. It seemed that they could shatter a whole world if they spun a little bit. The old ancestral god was rendered speechless. He gazed at that scene and even forgot breathing. The ancestors who had just returned from being hurled away by Su Ping's attack were rooted on the spot. Their heads went blank as they saw such an unbelievable sight. It was an epic moment that would forever be etched in their hearts. The monster that stood there, with universes floating above his head, was like an ancient fiend that had returned to the world. He was producing so much pressure that nobody could possibly resist him. Ancestor Su. The elders under the protection of ancestral god Wen Tian were just as shocked. It was beyond astounding. The ancestral gods were like fireflies in front of the sun when compared to Su Ping. They were like flying worms in the presence of his gargantuan body. Chapter 15:25, Destroying the Rain Clan 1. The world was quiet at the moment. All the ancestral gods were so befuddled that none of them dared to move. They trembled like moths, overtaken by the fear of death they had almost forgotten. That long-lost feeling refreshed their memories and reminded them of what they were like when they were weak. I'll be in charge from now on. Any objections? Su Ping looked down at them and his voice resounded in the world. After witnessing the deep-seated arrogance of the 7 great clans, Su Ping was determined to become a dictator. The greatest advantage of a dictatorship was efficiency. All instructions would be carried out swiftly, without arguments. Dictatorships had existed in every era. It was just that some were the acts of individuals while others worked in groups, just like the great clans had ruled over the godly world together. Their group effort had rendered all others incapable of resisting. All the gods answered with silence, while looking at the mythical figure who was surrounded by bead-like universes. The immense pressure made it hard for them to breathe. Su Ping had easily suppressed them with only the power of 4 universes. He could instantly kill any of them at the moment. Such power would make you see them all as ants. You wouldn't even feel sorry for wiping them out. That was why emperors were ruthless in ancient times. The tendency was for them to act with indifference when they could decide other people's fate with one word. This had nothing to do with what was right and what was wrong. It was just an instinct developed in a certain environment. Su Ping snorted after seeing them bow their heads. It was true that negotiations couldn't be done without fists and blades. The truth would be in his hands when he had absolute power. "Come here," Su Ping said indifferently. The ancestral gods looked at each other in bewilderment and flew towards him in fright. Su Ping moved his feet to let Ancestor Fei get up. She didn't dare resist his summons and turned back into her beautiful, green-haired appearance, clearly afraid. She obediently approached. The sight of the magnificent figure before them was the clear announcement that the age of the 7 greatest clans was in the past. That human ancestor had exceeded the limits of what ancestral gods could achieve. It was possible that he had already reached the end of all cultivation. While the godly experts' hearts were in turmoil, Su Ping said indifferently, "Inform all the clans. Tell them to be prepared for the war against the heavenly Tao in the future. This is my command, understand." All the ancestral gods shivered and said, "Understood." "Get lost right now." Su Ping sneered. He withdrew his universes and resumed his human appearance. He didn't bother looting the 7 greatest clans' training resources. Although intimidated, none of them suffered any losses. He didn't make a move to collect fortunes for the sake of humankind. Given his status, humankind would surely receive all kinds of gifts after establishing their territory. They were still too weak and could choke if they ate too much too fast. Su Ping thought it would be enough for humans to be respected in the world of gods. His real enemies were the heavens. Without settling that matter, the world of gods would only be destroyed, even if he reformed it according to his wishes. All the ancestral gods left in frustration. Some of them anxiously took away the remains of the experts from their clans who died in battle. They were relieved to see that Su Ping didn't fly into a rage. Su Ping didn't refine the great Tao fragments he had absorbed just yet. He approached ancestral god Wen Tian and said, "I have something else to do. I'll leave this place to you, brother Wen Tian. Tell me if they act arrogantly again." Wen Tian was rather flattered by this. He had been slightly nervous after having seen Su Ping's unstoppable performance. After all, he could easily kill an ancestral god. "I will." Wen Tian accepted the request while smiling bitterly in his heart. As long as the 7 clans weren't stupid, they would probably never challenge Su Ping's authority. The fellow had single-handedly suppressed them. Such power couldn't be resisted by any schemes or tricks. They could only obey him. The elders of the Heaven Path Institute were surprised and delighted to see Su Ping. Having Ancestor Su's backing, the Heaven Path Institute would certainly become the best school in the godly world, one that everyone would revere. Su Ping didn't stay for much longer. He took Joanna away from that place. "Ancestor Su is truly the greatest genius in history. I've never seen anyone cultivate as fast as him." Ancestor Su's current level, is he already beyond the ancestral god realm? Beyond the ancestral god realm, isn't it the legendary unparalleled state? All the elders were shocked. They had to look up to ancestral gods, and even those existences had to look up to Su Ping. Yan Qing and the others had mixed feelings. There was once a time when Su Ping was a little kid who needed their help. He had suddenly grown and become a towering tree. "Humanity will become the Archean divinity's biggest clan in the next 100,000 years," remarked an elder. "Maybe the world of gods will need a name change." Su Ping's battle had already become legendary, making everybody wonder. He wasn't too bothered with it. He had no feelings about gods anymore, after having seen sorcerer ancestor Hun Yu fight the heavens with billions of mythical creatures. Gods were only life forms slightly stronger than normal. They could not compare to mythical creatures. "Have you reached the end of all cultivation?" Joanna looked at Su Ping curiously. She found it hard to imagine what he was capable of at the moment.